Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the District 9's Great Debate. My name is Anika Christopher, and I am a member of this year's Candidate Debate Planning Committee. I will serve as your host for this forum. First, we will have an opening prayer by Pastor Brooks.
Wonderful. I don't have to say, shall we all stand? This is good. Let us bow our heads for prayer at this time. Dear God, we thank you for your grace and your mercy extended toward us. Thank you for your protection and provision in all our lives, despite the difficulties we go through from day to day. Thank you for the health and strength you provide so that we can effectively function in the purpose for which you have created us. Thank you for this opportunity, for the community and the political candidates of this district to engage in wholesome dialogue in the fashion of this debate tonight. We know that no man can tame the tongue, but we pray for your guidance in this debate tonight. May each person function with focus, respect, honesty, and clarity as the questions are presented to them. Help each candidate to be sincere and considerate as they share their responses. Remove anxiety, frustration, and confusion from their minds and hearts, and give calm and clarity to each of them. May those participating from the audience conduct themselves respectfully, with order, understanding, and consideration for one another. Help this time to be a very fruitful and beneficial time for all who are present and those viewing online. We thank you for your goodness and continued faithfulness toward us, especially in these times. Bless our time together. In Jesus' name, amen.
Thank you, Pastor Brooks. Can we all remain standing for the territorial song?
With strength and with power we overcame to restore Virgin Islands' pride, to preserve the beauty we devised a plan to obtain ownership of your precious land, educating your people, the success of this territory. Oh, how radiant are your daughters, how wealthy are your sons. Your riches boast your beauty, and your success is second to none. Green and brilliant are your hillsides, very blemish are homes and pride. Oh, beautiful Virgin Islands, your quality can never be denied. Oh, beautiful Virgin Islands, your qualities can never be denied.
All right, you may be seated. All right, so before we begin, I would like to explain the ground rules that were given to the candidates before this debate. Each candidate will have 3 minutes to give their opening statements. After their opening statements, the debate begins. There will be a total of 3 rounds for the debate. In round one, questions that would have been sent to each candidate ahead of time will be asked by the moderator. Candidates will have 3 minutes to respond to each question. After responding, the moderator will then invite each candidate to provide a rebuttal if they so desire. If a candidate decides to rebut, they will have 1 minute to do so. In the second round, candidates will be expected to respond to questions on the spot. Candidates will have 2 minutes to respond to each question. After responding, the moderator will invite each candidate once again to provide a rebuttal if they so desire. If a candidate decides to rebut, they will have 1 minute to do so. In the final round, it'll comprise of both questions submitted by the public via email as well as the live audience. Candidates will have 3 minutes to respond to each question. After responding, the moderator will invite each candidate to provide a rebuttal if they choose to. If a candidate decides to rebut, they will have 1 minute to do so. For each segment, the question is first asked by the moderator, and each candidate will have an opportunity to respond. The moderator simply reminds the candidates of the time and moves to another question when the topic appears exhausted. Now, at this time, cards are being distributed to the live audience. For those of you who wish to have questions submitted to the third round, you will write those questions down on the paper provided. The cards will be collected after the opening statements are finished. Now, for timekeeping, a bell will be rung. For each round, the first ring indicates that the candidates have 1 minute remaining. The second ring will indicate that time is up. For each rebuttal round, however, yes, that's what the bell sounds like. For each rebuttal round, the bell will ring only once to indicate that time is up. Now, finally, to facilitate a smooth and civilized debate, members of the audience are required to adhere to the following guidelines. Please remain silent while a candidate presents his or her response to a question. Please engage in active listening. Noisemakers such as air horns, whistles, and bullhorns are strictly prohibited. Cell phones should remain off or on silent mode for the duration of the debate. Calls should not be taken during the debate. Now, without further ado, I will now turn things over to our moderator for this evening, Mr. Damian Grange. Thank you.
Thank you, Anika. Good evening, everybody. Well, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished candidates and residents of the beautiful 9th District of the British Virgin Islands, comprising Virgin Gorda and Antigua. Welcome to the highly anticipated great debate ahead of the general elections of April 24. My name is Damian Grange, as Anika mentioned, and I have the great honor of serving as your moderator for this important event. As we gather here tonight, we must remember that we're here not just to listen, but to engage in a civil and constructive dialogue. The decisions we make in the upcoming elections will shape our future, and it is through discussions like these that we gain a better understanding of the ideas and solutions proposed by our candidates. We are privileged to have with us 4 distinguished candidates who are eager to share their vision for the 9th District and the wider Virgin Islands as a whole. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Vernon Vanterpool, Independent District 9 candidate. We welcome Honorable Shireen Flax-Charles of the Progressive Virgin Islands Movement. We welcome Mr. Coy Levens of the National Democratic Party. And finally, we welcome our incumbent representative, Honorable Vincent Wheatley of the Virgin Islands Party. Each of our candidates brings a wealth of experience, dedication, and passion to the table. So tonight, we will hear their plans, policies, and thoughts on various issues that impact our lives and the future of our beloved islands. We hope that this debate will provide you with a valuable insight to make an informed decision at the polls. And to ensure a fair and balanced debate, each candidate will have equal time to answer questions, as Anika mentioned, and share their perspectives. We encourage the candidates to be respectful of each other's time and views, and we also ask the audience to maintain a respectful atmosphere throughout the event. Let us now embark on this journey together as we seek to understand the visions and aspirations of these candidates who hope to represent the 9th District in the British Virgin Islands general elections. Once again, welcome, and let the great debate begin. Each candidate, as mentioned, will begin with an opening statement, and we will begin with Mr. Vernon Vanterpool. Your 3 minutes begin now, sir.
Good evening. I thank the pastor for opening us up with prayer, the moderator. Good evening to Honorable Shireen Flax-Charles, Honorable Vincent Weekly, and Mr. Coy Levens. Good evening to the listening public. Good evening to the esteemed residents of the 9th District of Anegada and Virgin Gorda. I came here with one purpose in mind, is to represent, and represent in honest and in truth. I am not seeking anything. I come with representation for the people. I come to better all of our situations. I am a resident of Anegada, and I feel the same pain and have the same struggles like all of us. I am embarking on having a transparent government that all citizens will benefit from alike. You will be able to come to me at any time. I wouldn't have no office hours. My office hours is anywhere you meet me. In the street, in church, wherever it is, you can talk to me. I guarantee you that. It would not say, oh, call my secretary, make an appointment. I am here to make sure our educational system get back on track, our health situation, in particular, our emergencies. We all suffer the same dilemma here in Virginia and in Anegada. So I would like you, when you go out to the polls on the 24th, look for the crown. Your candidate, your next representative for the 9th District, Vernon Vanterpool. Put your X next to the crown. Have a pleasant good night, and I expect to have a good, wholesome debate. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vanterpool. And our production team asked that the candidates remain seated so that you remain in good lighting for the camera. Honorable Flax-Charles, your 3-minute begins.
Good evening, Virgin Gorda. Good evening, Anegada. Good evening, British Virgin Islands. Shireen Flax-Charles. Everyone knows me as the voice of the people, the one who stood out alone to speak up against injustices, victimization, and persecution. Before I go further, I want to wish a young lady in the audience happy birthday today, and that is Miss Christina Yates, who is one of our stalwart heroines in the 9th District. I also want to extend 100 birthday wishes to Miss Florissa George in North Sound, who will be celebrating grandly on Sunday. The people of the district knows what I stand for. Youth empowerment, disposal of crown lands fairly, health care and access, business-friendly environments, and the performance of the public servants as well as governance. I have always said I am not a politician, but a representative of the people. I have traveled from Anegada to Jahphix in the last 4 years. I consider myself, and I know it to be true, that I am the most traveled member of the House of Assembly in the past 4 years. I have traveled to Anegada for the last 24 years, literally every week. I know the district inside out. I go all the way from Oil Nut Bay to Crooks Bay to Stony Bay on Virgin Gorda. And from time to time, we must remember that there are also other islands in the 9th district, inclusive of Prickly Pear, Mosquito, Nika, Eustacia, Sabre Rock, the dogs. On election day, I ask you to vote for the team, the Progressive Virgin Islands Movement team. Look for that arrow. This is a team of integrity, and we intend to take this Virgin Islands to a higher level, moving upward. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Flax Charles. And we'll now move on to Mr. Levens.
Ladies and gentlemen, colleagues, residents of the 9th district, those that are online, I bid you good evening. Thank you for inviting me to this debate. It is imperative that at this debate we discuss the issues that matters to the people. At this debate, it is important that we try to develop ideas. Let me give you a little bit about myself. My name is Coy Levens, and I am from the island of Anegada. My experience have led me to hold executive positions as well as board positions in the government and in statutory boards. My passion is about the people. My passion is about the country. Tonight, I want us to engage in a discussion that when we leave here this evening, we could leave with a form of purpose. When we leave here this evening, that we have some level of direction. It is important to hold debates because debate stimulates the mind and it stimulates intellectual conversation. Hence, my platform this evening is representative of who I am, to deal with the issues of healthcare, something that is very important to the community and by extension to the British Virgin Islands. I also want to take time to look at our infrastructure, because it is key that whilst we are operating our infrastructure, that we operate to international standards. Why? Because we need to raise the standard of how we do things in the BVI so that we can operate equal to our counterparts outside of us. I also want to look at diversifying of the economy, so we can look at agriculture and aquaculture and try to stimulate growth within the economy for our youngsters. This evening, I'm very thankful to each and every one of you, and I am grateful that we can sit here this evening and undertake this task. I ask that whatever we do today, that we continue to do it to the best of our ability, respect for each other. My objective in my party is to give you a vision that is realistic, to carry you on a mission that is achievable, and to provide solutions that make sense and that is practical, and that solution that we can implement so that we can move the district in the direction that the district is supposed to go. Welcome one, welcome all. Have a good night. And let us continue to strive to carry our island in the direction that it's supposed to go. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Levens. We will now move on to Honorable Wheatley for his 3-minute allotment.
A pleasant good evening to everyone here in this audience. It's so good to see so many of you here, particularly the young people here. I want to say hello to all the persons on the online media and those listening by radio from Enigada to Jahphix, but particularly here in the 9th District. I am the incumbent, Honorable Vincent Wheatley. 4 years ago, you put your confidence in me and Team VIP to move this country forward, to advocate for you. And we've done just that, working together after the hurricanes, during the COI, despite the many challenges. We moved Virgin-Gorda from Joseph's Pit to the Forbes list. And that is no easy feat. Working together, we did that. Lots done, but lots more to go. And while we were doing the infrastructure, the schools, the admin buildings, repairing homes, rebuilding homes, and the community centers, I was with you all the way, worshiping with you at your various churches, attending all the fundraising events, going to your graduations, mourning with you at your funerals. Your joy was my joy, and your pain was my pain. I want you to understand it's a very critical time here. Tonight, we're putting all our ideas forward. I want to commend the committee for putting on this debate, because I thought at one time it wasn't going to happen. It is so important we have events like this, where you could come and hear us speak to you in this forum, where you get to understand who has the passion, the knowledge, and the experience to move this country from where it is to where it needs to go to. We will distinguish ourselves right here before your eyes and ears this evening. You will see the difference when we present ourselves on the issues of healthcare, infrastructure development, the issue of land, and a lot of things personal talk, thinking of doing, are things I've already been working on. Your duty is to send me back to the house on the 24th to finish up, not to start, but to finish up the things that I started. Thank you, and do enjoy the evening.
Thank you, Honorable Wheatley, and we'll accept a general round of applause for all candidates this evening. We will begin with our first question, and our first question will go to Mr. Vernon Vanterpool. Mr. Vanterpool, with concerns about our health and the state of the environment, how do you propose to deal with garbage disposal? I'll repeat the question. With the concerns about our health and the state of the environment, how do you propose to deal with garbage disposal?
I propose to deal with the garbage by installing a multiple-phase approach, which will need to be taken with recycling and an incinerator, with an installation of from waste to an energy plant, thus reducing the electricity, the bills, going green. I think that will be one of the best options. We could probably even think about probably badging it to Tortola, which might be too expensive. So the best option will be have one installed here where we could have a resilient electric supply of energy, where when we use that garbage, it will burn and we could turn that into electricity.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Vanterpool. Honorable Flax Charles, same question to you. Would you like me to repeat?
Thank you.
With concerns about our health and the state of the environment, how do you propose to deal with garbage disposal?
Thank you for the question. We have to stop open burning. We have to stop shoving our garbage, in particular in Virgin-Gorda, over the hillside. My proposal is to involve a public-private partnership. I have already been speaking with potential investors and donors to create an industrial park in the location where the current dump site is. It will create opportunities and employment. While an incinerator can assist, I believe that what we need to do is to recycle our garbage. Firstly, by educating the population. We propose to provide bins for every household in the 9th District so that they learn to recycle. after which we will make a $3 million investment, public-private partnership, with machinery that shreds all of the garbage once it is separated. We can create something called carbon black. We can turn the energy from the recycling of the waste, burning that waste in an enclosed area when whatever comes out of that machine is clear and not anything that is harmful to the health. We will then create solar farms as well as wind power as a result of some of these things. I have visited many areas where they do recycling, and an industry that we are going to create here from recycling is creating shoes and clothing from recycled material. I am already retailing some of that product from other countries here in the British Virgin Islands. Yes, it's going to take the entire village. We have to make sure that we are willing to get involved. And there are donors that we have already spoken to that are willing to be involved in this project. I am not a fan of the bins along the sides of the road. So we have to move with a pilot project towards house-to-house door collection. It is being done in Anegada. We can do a portion of it here in Virgin Gorda in some of the flat-lying areas. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Honorable Charles. And we are now going to go to Mr. Levens. Do you want me to repeat the question, sir? With concerns about our health and the state of the environment, how do you propose to deal with garbage disposal?
I can't get up. Okay. Let's speak. The environment is a very important part of the natural resource that we have in the British Virgin Islands. It is our environment is what does allow us to stimulate our economy, for that is what the tourist comes to see. It is our environment that does protect the ecosystems that we have in place. And it is our environment that does allow us to go in a direction of food security. Thank you for that question, Mr. Chairman, because that question is much greater than garbage disposal. That question requires a strategy of implementation of a waste management system. And in order to implement this system, I will propose 4 steps. The first step would be education. The second step would be legislation. The third step would be recycling. And the fourth step would be bulk waste. As it relates to education, we need to get the NPOs on board to bring awareness to the community. We need to put the schools in gear to be able to start to program the minds of the children. For the recycling is not the garbage, but it's also the recycling of the mentality that human beings have in terms of recycle. Then we need to get community meetings in place to be able to teach people and to reach them and to make them see and understand the benefits of what the environment is to us. Now, we're speaking about garbage disposal, but I want to elevate it to waste management because the strategy is we have to stop the open burning. We have to reduce, but completely in the long term, stop it. Now, to get it started, the first thing that we have to do is we have to look at the legislative process. We have to make sure that what we do is that we put into gear sorting and curbside pickup in the territory. Because, ladies and gentlemen, what that does for you is allow the garbage to be sorted at the homes of the people. And what that does for you now is allow you to have organization in the system when it comes to collection, segmenting your garbage on the days that you need to pick it up. And then we need to look at the recycling element. At some point, we'll have to get in bed with a public partner partnership to put up a facility. But the strategy entails ensuring that the local businesses are the ones at the sorting facility, Green and Clean, VI Plastic, Green Creek. Everybody have their sector in the supply chain that they can produce recycling. The objective, ladies and gentlemen, is to reduce the waste, but more so in the long term, to eliminate the concept of open burning. And I am positive that if we take the steps and plant the right seed and commit ourselves to it, that we can reduce
Thank you,
the
Mr.
level of
Levens.
waste in the 9th district.
Thank you very much. We're now going to move on to Honorable Vincent Wheatley. The question is, with concerns about the health and the state of the environment, how do you propose to deal with garbage disposal?
Studies have shown that the BVI's environment is worth about $125 million annually. So we cannot take the environment very, very lightly. The end goal must be recycling. Recycling has a component of education to it, but we don't have to reinvent the wheel about how to get recycling going. Green VA they have the model there. Antigua also has a model of what they went through to get recycling. What these guys are talking about has already started. We hired Agent Red to do a complete waste management strategy. The strategy gave us the 7 R's, starting from reform, ending with rethink. So he's absolutely right. We have to rethink how we handle our waste. Now, if you look at the current models that we have, my opinion has always been there's no room in the 9th district for garbage. Open air burn is even worse. Let's look at the models that we've tried so far. Over in Jahphix, the garbage is housed in the facility in Jahphix, not really sorted, and then barged to Parkwood Pond to be incinerated. But we know what happens at Parkwood Pond and all the complaints that happens to the west of it. The second option we have, if you try that particular strategy from Virgin Gorda, I think the cost would be prohibitive, given the distance and the cost of fuel to barge Virgin Gorda's garbage to be incinerated in Tortola. What we did that came from the Wood Group, they proposed 4 incinerators. They were actually proposed to be ordered. 2 for Tortola, 1 for Anegada, and 1 for Virgin Gorda. They were ordered, but the current minister didn't see it fit to go that way. A small incinerator can work right now as a short-term measure to eliminate some of the garbage that's being dumped up or burned on the hill. The long-term strategy must be the education process of recycling everything. Once we get an incinerator here, automatically reduces the amount of garbage going up there. 2, we must individually do our part in our homes. That's separation of garbage. Anyone who lives anywhere outside the BVI, know you must separate your garbage, and different days have different things you put out. The meat kinds, the plastics, and the woods and so forth, papers and so forth, have different days. The curbside is a very good idea. It works in the garden. We too can try something like that here. The ultimate goal is to have recycling done, the 7 R's, from restore, reform, up to rethink. It's a process. It takes time. And
Thank you, Honorable Wheatley. Now, each candidate, if you so choose, you may have a 1-minute rebuttal. Mr. Levens?
I like the way my colleague articulated his question, but the issue that I have is that having a report without the commitment of the government to implement it is like a boat on dry land. I am not aware of any collection legislation that is in place to ensure, because the problem here is, ladies and gentlemen, the enforcement element of things. In order for you to carry this process out correctly, we have to ensure that we have legislation in place and that we have enforcement to back up the legislation. If we don't do that, we will be going and coming. So I think that is imperative. While I understand what he's saying, I think it's very imperative that we put the legislative framework in place, but more so ensure that we have the enforcement element of it to ensure that the process is being undertaken.
Thank you. Honorable Wheatley.
Okay, what he's referring to, we call the battle bill. It is in process to be passed through the House as soon as the AG Chambers is finished with it. What that will do is it will also open up the funding to do what we call an eco park or industrial park, which is, again, an excellent thing. You could actually be a tourist attraction. But we must pass the legislation in order to open up for the extra funding to move to the recycling and to move to an eco park where when the garbage comes there, it can be separated and it can be upscaled and reused like we do with the plastics to build fences and furniture and so forth. So that is in process also. Thank you.
Thank you. Honorable Charles, Flex Charles.
Thank you. One of the things that we need to put in place, legislation is good. We have bills that have been passed in the House from 2000, the year 2000, that have not come into force yet. With a PVIM government, be rest assured that all of those bills will be looked at. We need to put a ban on plastic bags. I have been to Antigua specifically, where they have implemented that plan, and it works. Everybody has a reusable bag. And so those are the things that we need to do. We have to do it because we have to care about our health and well-being. It has to be about the people, not passing 200 bills in the House and nothing is moving forward.
Thank you, Honorable Flax Charles. Mr. Levens, I'm sorry, you only have 1 minute per rebuttal per question.
I don't think legislation by itself will work. Charity begins at home. I have 2 young sons. They carry their trash till when they reach a garbage bin. If we be responsible adults, our children learn from example. They don't learn from what you tell them to do. They learn from example. They're watching you, and they're watching you closely. Start it at home, and it will carry us where we need to go. Legislation sometimes is good, but in this case, I don't think it's going to stand on its own. We need to start teaching from home, and we as adults must stop our littering and that sort of behavior, and then we wouldn't have to worry about our environment.
Thank you, Mr. Vanderpool. Now, Mr. Vanderpool is pointing at me, but he means you, because I am still not yet a parent, okay? We'll move on to the next question, and Honorable Flax Charles, you will take the lead on this one. Agriculture, which was once a strong pillar of our economy, has rapidly declined. How do you propose to bring it back and turn it into a viable sector of our economy? I'll repeat. Agriculture, which was once a strong pillar of our economy, has rapidly declined. How do you propose to bring it back and turn it into a viable sector of our economy?
Thank you for the question. And many of you, I will put a disclaimer here. Yes, I served as the Junior Minister for Agriculture and Fisheries for the last 10 years. Our system of government does not allow junior ministers any kind of leverage to get anything done. You serve at the pleasure of the Premier. At one point, there was a document signed where I would have been allowed some autonomy, and that document was pulled back. However, I have worked very closely with an organization here in the 9th District called Green Sprouts. And education is the key. We have to keep these programs in the schools. We requested funding for Green Sprouts. There was a negative response. I am still out there battling to get that funding. We must include the youth to ensure it's viable. The agriculture and fisheries sector was taken away from us, but the will of the people must bring it back, and we have to start with younger people in our district. You can grow 6,000 heads of lettuce in 37 days in a container using hydroponics, and we intend with public and private partnerships to ensure that this is a reality. This is no talk shop when it comes to the PVIM government. And we have to include, again, as I said, the young people. Many proposals have gone through and they sit on the shelves with no response. And I've had the opportunity to speak with the persons that head up Green Sprouts, literally in tears because nothing They've submitted several proposals and nothing positive has happened. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Flax Charles. Mr. Levens, we're going to move on to you. Agriculture, which was once a strong pillar of our economy, has rapidly declined. How do you propose to bring it back and turn it into a viable sector of our economy?
Thank you, moderator, for the question. Agriculture is one of the most important industries, and I sometimes feel in the BVI it is underrated. You have to understand that agriculture has the ability to generate revenue by allowing individuals to hire people. And it is the thing that is responsible for healthy nutrition and proper food security. However, I want to take it on a bigger level because the agriculture department, to me, needs to shift its role into a more supportive role. The agriculture department needs to look at the water issue that the farmers are experiencing. Because let me tell you this, in discussions with the farmers, one of the single most components is the cost of water. Agriculture department need to look at supporting them through technology and being able to have technology in place to make the processes more efficient and by extension make it cheaper for them. They also need to look and work with the Ministry of Natural Resources to allocate commercial lands so that they would have the ability to be able to have land. But I know the time is short, but I would recommend a hybrid system. So here what we do, we have the local association with the experts. We go to the residents and we tell them, listen, we'll charge you a fee and we set up your backyard with either a greenhouse or an actual garden. And then what we do when we have that is if everybody or a few people have that, what we do is we start to change the thought process. We now have the ability to have people having fruits to eat at their homes. And then what would happen now is we would go in and make sure we do things like the soil testing so that I could tell you, listen, this is what you need to put in your backyard. I educate you as to the moon. I educate you as to your water system. And then once you do that now, you move it into the commercial system where you have now the agricultural lots being allocated and then the farmers now having the tourists come in and being able to walk through the agriculture farms and taste natural culture and understand the essence of the British Virgin Islands.
Thank you, Mr. Levens and Honorable Wheatley. The question now goes to you. Agriculture, which was once a strong pillar in our economy, has rapidly declined. How do you propose to bring it back and turn it into a viable sector of our economy?
We first begin by acknowledging that food security must be more than just a talking word. We have to take food production seriously. And yes, at one time both Anegada and Virgin Islands could sustain themselves and created surpluses to send to nearby islands, Tortola, St. Thomas, St. Croix. So what we need to make farming viable again? The first thing we need is to make sure we allocate farming lands like we did in Anegada, 40 acres. Virgin Islands still has to have areas for farming. I took the farmer minister to all the spots. I said, this would be a good spot here. That would be a good spot there. Let's declare these lands farming lands. Then we have to find the willing farmers. That's the easiest thing. People here only know how to farm. They're actually very good at it. Lands, farmers. Third thing we need is money. Money was already allocated through the Money Services Act for farming and fishing. Get the money to the people. And then we must work with those farmers to find ready markets for them, like we did with chicken. When we started doing cane, those farms there, we said you can no longer import chicken because we're producing the chicken locally. You put some restrictions on the importation of stuff that the local farmers can grow. And then we go high-tech, aquaponics, and we do agrivoltaic. You can do specific fruits in small containers, strawberries, grapes, onions, single fruits. Find a supermarket or a hotel to take your product. It's a ready market waiting on your product. You're not going to guess where your product is going to go when it's harvested. There's someone there waiting on your product. This is not a rocket science. It takes some political will. And that's what I intend to push strongly on. Food security is a must. We must go beyond the talk and get it done. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Wheatley. Mr. Vanderpool, we'll move to you. Agriculture, which was once a strong pillar in our economy, has rapidly declined. How do you propose to bring it back and turn it into a viable sector of our economy?
Thank you for the question. First and foremost, we have to start re-educating the people so we can get a different mindset from thinking that agriculture is a substandard profession. Agriculture is supposed to be the most viable profession in a growing society. People look down at a farmer, but without a farmer, we can't eat. Let's look at that. We'll die. We need to have lands allocated first before we can start to think about farming. Nothing seems to be done with that because we're thinking backyard garden, backyard garden. My father worked like 8 acres of land, and every season we throw out our old crop to take in the new. That old crop was fed to our goats, sheep, and fowls. This is how we got to start thinking. We got to stop thinking backyard and go big, because we can feed ourselves, but that mind have to be retrained. And we start that from re-educating our children them from in school, and next generation might get it. And then we could be a sustainable Virgin Islands. I thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vanderpool. Honorable Flax Charles, you have 1 minute to rebut.
Thank you. The Department of Agriculture did play a supportive role and a supporting role with farmers. I remember the days of Mr. Beckford, Mr. Pereira, and now Ms. Leslie Maduro, when the Department of Agriculture went to the farms. That was taken away from the farmers, both produce farmers and livestock farmers. And we all know that story, and we all know who was responsible for taking away that privilege from the farmers. We have to marry traditional farming and modern technology. And we have to still have private and public partnerships. I invite everyone to go across to the Little Dix Bay field tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. where you will see a major property in the territory partnering with our local farmers here in Virgin Gorda. That is support.
Thank you, Honorable Charles. Mr. Levens, you would like to rebut?
Yeah, I think what Honorable Charles is talking about is the same concept I was trying to explain about the greenhouse, or actually the backyard farm. That's the same concept I was trying to explain. But Mr. Vincent, I want to touch on the issues of farmlands. The issue of farmlands, more specifically Enigada, requires a strategy, because you cannot allocate the land if you don't have a strategy in place to know well what it is we are producing. And then we have to look at the water content and all of these things. And Ms. Charles, as you were saying that the agriculture support, Ms. Charles, I passed the building the other day and I see something up there. I see nothing up. There is no agriculture going on in Enigada. There is no agriculture department going on in Virgin Gorda. So I think it's a bit ambitious to say that the agriculture department is in a supportive position, when in fact, to be honest with the people, it ain't got nothing. I went to the agriculture fair the other day, and I see every other thing else except fruit and vegetables. So the point that I'm trying to make is that the strategy has to be realistic and achievable.
Thank you, Mr. Levens. Honorable Wheatley.
Yes, I forgot to mention the issue of water. Water is one of those things that I've said it before. I do not believe you can build a sustainable agricultural system on street water. Well, it wouldn't work in Enigada, but Enigada has well. But in Virgin Gorda, we have to start damming the guts and collecting the rainwater when it falls. It takes a lot of street water to grow a crop, a lot less rainwater. And the rainwater gives you a much stronger, more viable crop any day of the week. Thank you.
Mr. Vanderpool.
Ladies and gentlemen, the reality is we do not have no agriculture here in the Virgin Islands. Agriculture needs to be restored. Before we can start talking all the chalala lele, we need to restore agriculture back. And then we could start thinking about feeding ourselves. We have no agriculture. Agriculture was killed under the 2 previous administrations. It takes someone who knows about getting them hands dirty to get agriculture back where it was and where it needs to be. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Vanderpool. We will move on to the final question in this segment.
As a reminder, please remember to turn your cell phones on off or silent. Thank you. This question will go to Mr. Levens. For too long, the sister islands have had to endure expensive and rough crossings to Tortola to seek medical attention. What is your proposal to ease this situation, and how do you propose to fund it? Should I repeat?
No, I'm good.
Okay.
In this day and age, let's be real about this situation, more so on Virgin Gorda. Medical care is imperative. When you look at the demographics of the North Song area and you see the senior citizens, it's important that you have a robust medical system in place. But ladies and gentlemen, I went up by the Iris O'Neill Clinic, and the clinic is pretty decent on the 4th floor. But I come up my first ages in Virgin Gorda, and I cannot believe that 20, 25, and 30 years later, a mother cannot make a child in the clinic of Virgin Gorda. I think that what needs to happen is we need to look at putting in place a proper system at the Iris O'Neill Clinic that would allow us to be able to reduce the amount of times that people go to Tortola. However, on a broader spectrum, we need to look at airlift seriously. And the easiest way to look at airlift is look at your topography. Your topography dictates that you have places that don't have airports. The strategy is we get a helicopter. The helicopter can be used for multiple purposes: search and rescue, medical airlift, police and border management and control. And the easiest way to fund it is to simply add on, let's say for argument's sake, $1.75 on the NHI. That would give us enough money to pay the operational costs, and the rest of the money could come from the line items of the organizations. And that is where we have to be. We have to take ourselves out of the local concept and go regional. But for Virgin Gorda, right now, what is imperative is putting infrastructure in place to reduce the airlift, because when somebody gets damaged and is critical, you can say what you want. You can't put them on a boat in rough water because they're extremely critical. So we have to get to the place where we can reduce or mitigate that problem, and the way to mitigate that is to invest in the medical treatment. Look at your population. Virgin Gorda is the mecca of the British Virgin Islands, and it's imperative that you put these systems in place to support the local economy to support also the local people and the businesses.
Thank you, Mr. Levens. And we're now going to move on to Honorable Wheatley. Same question. For too long, the sister islands have had to endure expensive and rough crossings to Tortola to seek medical attention. What is your proposal to ease this situation, and how do you propose to fund it?
Well, I agree with you on that. It's an age-old problem. We've made significant progress, but we have much more work to do. Our health is our wealth, and we take that very, very seriously. Let's start with the Iris O'Neill Clinic. That clinic is a very well-stocked clinic with machines, but I've been informed that what the issue is the lack of technicians. I say, what do you mean lack of technicians? We have scholarships. Why don't we dedicate a few scholarships just to train our people who are interested in the medical field to go and learn to operate those machines? For something as simple as an X-ray, you got to go to Tortola. Totally unnecessary. Let's find somebody, let's get them trained. It takes about 1 year, 2 years, let's get them trained. The second thing we have here is how do you pay for it? We have to integrate NHI and MASA. The option of buying a helicopter can work, but that's a very expensive route to go. We can marry NHI by tweaking it with MASA to make sure that transportation is readily available and seamlessly available. If you're in Agada, we need to make sure doctors are stationed there more than 2 days a week or more than 4 days a week. We now have 5 doctors on Virgin Gorda. There's no way, no reason why in this day and age a doctor is in Agada more than the days that we have now. These are easy fixes. This is just the will to make things happen. And I guarantee you, when I'm re-elected, the first month, that problem will be addressed. The tweaking of NHI may take a little longer. But we have to get the transportation to see something rough for Enagada. So Enagada must be airlift, helicopter or plane. Virgin Gorda, helicopter. The planes cannot fly into Virgin Gorda ever. So that a helicopter or a properly outfitted boat. Let NHI and MASA come together to solve that problem. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Wheatley. And we're now going to move on to Mr. Vanterpool. Same question. For too long, the sister islands have had to endure expensive and rough crossings to Tortola to seek medical attention. What is your proposal to ease this situation, and how do you propose to fund it?
Thank you for your question. My proposal is quite simple and straightforward. We can go to them, so we'll bring them to us. I will bring in specialists to our hospitals, private, government, and our clinics with an internship attached to our college where we could have our people trained, and at the end of the day, we will have our trained personnel people going to school, getting internship, still serving our public. That's the approach I will go. The government will have to put in budgets to deal with that. And if we can't get it through the government budget, we will borrow our own money from the Social Security Board to get that done. I thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vanterpool. Honorable Flax Charles, same question. For too long, the sister islands have had to endure expensive and rough crossings to Tortola to seek medical attention. What is your proposal to ease this situation, and how do you propose to fund it?
Thank you, Damien. I have already started that process. Just yesterday, I was given a commitment from a donor in Colorado for 5 ambulances. I remember on BVI Friendship Day, I stood guard at the bathroom door for the premier to come outside because I found out that they had taken the ambulance from Gorda. And I will tell you, if I were here, I would have stood in front of that ambulance and would not have allowed it to get on the badge. We need a system in place where we have a helicopter, airplane, some sort of air ambulance service that allows for easy access to the main hospital. There's a helipad, or there was a helipad right across from the hospital in Tortola. I've heard all sorts of rumors about that land. But what I would say to you is that the community, public and private, has to come together. There are many private donors willing to assist the government with health care. They have a stake in it as well, because their guests are coming to us, and those guests can easily have emergencies. My son had to be evacuated in 2014, so it's not that I don't know of the issue. I've been to Anegada, walking the phones when someone needed to be medevaced from Anegada. So it is not something new. Dialysis patients from Gorda have to go to Tortola. We have nurses that are sitting at home for whatever reason. We have BVI landers overseas in the field. We need to pay our healthcare workers. We've lost a lot of healthcare workers to Cayman Islands, higher salaries. We need to change that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Flax Charles. You now have 1 minute to rebut if you so choose. Mr. Levens.
I want to say this. The BVI is the sailing capital of the world, and the other day we had an incident. And this is why I'm proposing that we get a helicopter along with the police and an air unit. And this is why. Imagine an accident taking place. You have the ability to dispatch a helicopter, dispatch a gun, lift up the individual and carry them to the hospital. Massa provides a service, yes, but it's better that we do the service ourselves, because we live in a place, if you look at what's happening now with our borders. So we need a multi-use device that would allow the police and immigration to police the borders. And we need to be in control, because once we start to talk about national security, then we have to be in the driving seat. We can't put our security in the hands of another nation. And that is why I say it is imperative. Paying for the helicopters, no problem. What is $4 million compared to the set of money that we see spending irresponsibly up and down the place? So I put in it to any one of them. Would you put a cost on the life of anybody in the British Virgin Islands say that is not affordable? No. I beg to differ.
Thank you.
Honorable Wheatley.
One of the things I would like to see also, speaking of doctors abroad, we do have a lot of doctors abroad. I must commend Dr. Amber Wheatley for leaving the UK to come back to serve our own country. We have to create national pride in our doctors abroad and other professionals abroad. It's not always about money. Sometimes your country and your service to your country must count for something. If all you're going to work for is money, then we have failed. We have failed you and you are failing us. We want to get our doctors abroad to come back. Let's have a conversation. Let's see if we can meet halfway between what you would make there versus here and how we can do it. When we start solving our own needs, I think this problem will start to diminish significantly. Thank you.
Thank you. Honorable Flax Charles.
Thank you. The clinic at Northsong has been closed for some time. It's not for my lack of trying, begging, pleading, even cursing to get this clinic reopened. We pay taxes too, and we should have whatever is available on the main island we should have here. I know of a young lady walking in New York who makes 100,000+ as a pharmacist slash nurse practitioner, and she was offered a job here in the BVI for $30,000 a year. What an insult. What an insult. And so the will of persons in authority, those who can sign on the dotted line to make these things happen, they are not doing it. No matter how much we beg, we plead, we write, the only thing that I have not done is kiss these people's feet, begging them to do the right thing for the people because I care.
Honorable Flax Charles. Mr. Vanterpool.
Thank you. We need an emergency system where we could have a boat along with the air vac, because they have some instances where you cannot even use the air vac due to visibility. Then we have to resort to the boat. So when the boat is rough, if we got visibility, we can use the air vac. Vice versa, we have to be diversive. And that will be my approach towards that situation there. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vanterpool. That concludes the first segment of tonight's debate. Our next segment, the questions are going to be coming from the audience as forwarded earlier. And you now have a 2-minute allotment in which you need to give your answer, and you still have a 1-minute rebuttal allotment per candidate. We will begin segment 2. After segment 2, we will take a 5-minute recess, okay? Okay. We will begin with you, Honorable Wheatley. Given the economic activity on Virgin Gorda, the banking situation needs to be drastically improved. What are your plans to tackle this?
Thank you for that question, Mr. Chair. When I got into office, there was absolutely no banking on Virgin Gorda. I was part of the negotiation to bring Banco Popular into Virgin Gorda. I have since spoken with them about the possibility of increasing the days. We are still in discussions. But barring that, when we repaired the Flax and Vanterpool buildings, one of the things I said we needed to have was the National Bank here on Virgin Gorda, an ATM and also a bank presence. That is still being discussed. I cannot say exactly when it will happen, but I guess they will say usually there's staffing issues or something. But we cannot, Virgin Gorda will not go forward with one bank. Okay, the banks are private institutions. We can't necessarily force them, but we need to get around a table with these banks and explain and express the importance of banking to the business community. Up to now still, we can't do a wire from Virgin Gorda. If you want to do a wire with Banco Popular, you have to go to Tortola to do a wire. I think in this day and age, that's an insult to the development of Virgin Gorda, and it is holding Virgin Gorda back.
Thank you, Honorable Wheatley. Mr. Vanterpool, same question to you. Given the economic activity on Virgin Gorda, the banking situation needs to be drastically improved. What are your plans to tackle this?
I thank you for your question. First of all, we as a people, we like to toe the line. These banks, when they come here, we need to have legislation to control them and not them control us. If you can't do business our way, you need to pack up and leave. I will negotiate with the institutions to come to Virgin Gorda, get an ATM machine in Anegada, and if they are not coming on our terms, we need not to renew licenses for these people. Bottom line.
Thank you, Mr. Venterpool. Honorable Flex Charles, we move to you with the same question. Given the economic activity on Virgin Gorda, the banking situation needs to be drastically improved. What are your plans to tackle this?
Thank you, Damien. I believe that we need to engage the BVI Banking Association. Such an association exists, and that is one of the things that we will be focusing on as a PVIM government. We have at the helm a former Minister of Finance as well as another candidate who's a specialist in finance. There are international guidelines that governs banks, but we must also remember to include the local people in anything that we do. Now the ATMs go down on a regular. There is a company here on Virgin Gorda that is willing to get the training. I have reached out to the banks asking if they would be interested. It is something that is in progress, because the attitude of some of the banks is that it's not a full-time job, but that company does other things. So they will be able to supplement their income, not from the machines alone being repaired.
Thank you, Honorable Charles. Mr. Levens.
I think this is an issue of scalability. You have to understand it from the bank perspective. You have a population of about 5,000–6,000 people, but you have various banking institutions that people are a part of. So to me, if we're going to look at something, we need to look at a strategy that will work. We need to walk the problem backward. So in other words, we need to find out from the bank what is the issue. I would propose that one of the things that we can do is get an MOU amongst the banks for the sake of money transfers and doing banking. And then what they can do, they can provide an outlet to the outer islands. And by having this MOU, it would allow one banking organization to operate all of its entities. And it's something that we could look at. I know that there would be issues with the legislation, maybe, and issues in terms of how it would work. But one of the things we have to be cognizant of is that we are operating businesses in an environment that is difficult sometimes to scale the business. And it is not that, I'm pretty sure it's not that the bank don't want to provide the service, but it has something to do with the cost of providing the service. So I think we need to walk the problem backward, and we could look at different strategies as to get it done. But it is an issue that needs to be solved.
Okay, so I have been robbing each of you of time. So Mr. Levens, I just robbed you of yours as well, just to make it fair, okay? You each have 1 minute after the first bell to conclude, okay? All right, that was my error. Forgive me. But we're open now for your 1 minute rebuttal.
It's easy to sit down here and talk about, you're going to talk to the banks and make the banks do this. I would also move into what I started some years ago, is educating the public on how to go cashless. I've been in countries in the world where you don't see money at all. Everything is a card. Once we educate, we had written this very spot here, we had a seminar on how to go cashless. Once we get, another person don't trust cashless, but it's the way to go in a situation in a remote place like Virgin Gorda, where the ATMs are down quite frequently, where the bank is only open 3 days a week, and the services are even limited at that point in time. You can travel places in this world with not a dime and survive. Everything is a card, a chip. We could educate our people on how to move in that direction. Thank you.
Mr. Levens.
Mr. Weekly, I must admit that you're onto something, and I would like to piggyback on your comment because it makes sense. And if something makes sense, then we run with it. I would say that is the direction that the country has to go, but this has to be a bigger discussion. This has to be a discussion where the government commit to doing this, because I will say they know what the problem is, but the question that lends itself is, why aren't the solutions being had? You have a community of business people. You have outer islands that are very high net worth. So my question is, why aren't these things being done? Both of you all have been part of the government system. So we need to kind of carry this level and make a commitment, because if we can get this done, it would allow the banks to scale the business and would allow us to be able to operate at a lower cost margin, therefore making it more scalable and easier for all of us. So Mr. Vincent, I think you're onto something, but I want to say that it requires commitment by the government to undertake the task.
Honorable Flax Charles.
Thank you. One of the challenges with the banking is that a lot of the major properties that are here on Virgin Gorda have been with another bank for decades, and most of them will not move their money to another bank. So that is one of the reasons why the bank doesn't open 5 days a week. We have to move towards more online banking. We have to sit down with persons who are not computer literate or technologically challenged like I am sometimes, but I literally do all of my stuff online. If I go to the bank, I go to the ATM once it's walk-in. Unfortunately today, I had to stand in the bank for an hour plus. The power went out, the generator took a long time to come on because I needed over $1,000. And you can't get that money from the machine with the bank that we have here with a regular account. So we need to work with the businesses also to obtain credit card machines to make it easier for them to do business.
Thank you, Honorable Flax Charles. Mr. Vanderpool, would you like to rebut?
Yes. Going cashless sounds good, but we have some old schoolers, and it just ain't gonna cut it with them. So cash still have to be in the picture for a very good long time. So we have to work with both the cash and the card system, because they have some. I could bring an example. When we first got electricity, we threw away our eye lamps. The first blackout, we all was scrambling in the garbage to see if we could find a lantern to go light. I thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vanderpool. And as a general reminder, you now have 2 minutes. The bell will ring on your first minute, and then you'll have another minute to wrap up, okay? And then each candidate will receive a 1-minute rebuttal. The next question goes to Mr. Vanderpool. The issue of same-sex marriage is now before the courts for a decision. Should the Virgin Islands legalize same-sex marriage? Give reasons for your response.
I personally would not accept it. No way, no how, don't care how you bring it. We have grown up in a society, a Christian society, for decades and hundreds of years, and that Bible is our yardstick, and I am sticking to it. We live by that Bible, and no one should be able to impose this on us. You can imagine my son going down the road and he looking and say, Dad, ain't that 2 men there? No, it's wrong. Wrong is wrong. Our standards is biblical, and we'll stick by it. I thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vanderpool. Honorable Flax Charles, same question to you. I'll repeat. The issue of same-sex marriage is before the courts for a decision. Should the Virgin Islands legalize same-sex marriage? Give reasons for your response.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. This is a very tough decision for persons to make. I grew up in a Christian community. I've traveled the world, I've gone to school in many places, and have been exposed to many types of people. While my belief is that a marriage between a man and a woman is sacred, I believe that a referendum by the people, for the people, should be had, and a court should not be deciding how we move forward. Many years ago, we used to have a ship come in and all of the persons on that ship were gay. No other island wanted to take them but Virgin Gorda, but Virgin Gordians are very hospitable. And we decided to take them here. And you know what? They enjoyed themselves. They were respectful of our culture as well. And at the end of the day, we are in the tourism business. And they're here amongst us all the time. Persons need to be able to make a choice. And by way of a referendum, the people of the BVI will have a say and the majority will rule. We are a capitalist country. We are democracy, and we should not allow anyone to tell us how a particular decision should be made. We should be making that decision, and I have to respect everyone's choice, whether it's to marry the same sex, whether it's to smoke marijuana, which is illegal.
Thank you, Honorable
persons have a
Charles.
choice.
Thank you so much. Mr. Levens, same question. Do you want me to repeat it? The issue of same-sex marriage is now before the courts for a decision. Should the Virgin Islands legalize same-sex marriage? Give reasons for your response.
The answer to that question lies in the Constitution. Every individual have a fundamental right to make a choice. And while we live in a Christian society, you cannot bar an individual from exercising the choice that he or she choose to make. I think that we as a society need to understand that we are living in a multicultural facet society. And while we are predominantly Christian, because I am a Christian, the purpose of a Christian is to accept people for who them is. So I honestly want to draw my line down the middle because I believe in mutual respect for people and allowing people to engage in whatever choice that they have. My only apprehension is, while I may respect your choice, I choose for you to respect my choice.
Mr. Honorable Wheatley, do you want me to repeat or?
Go ahead and repeat.
The issue of same-sex marriage is now before the courts for a decision. Should the Virgin Islands legalize same-sex marriage? Give reasons for your response.
Okay, the question, I don't think sometimes we understand what the question is trying to address. I know there are children here, but I think sometimes when we hear about same-sex marriage, we think we only hear the sex part. Same-sex marriage is not designed to condone sex between two male or two female. There's a moral aspect of it. And the moral aspect says whatever your religion dictates you do. I'm a Christian, so I will not be marrying a man or condone a man marrying a man or a woman marrying a woman. What same-sex marriage does, it allows a partner, when he or she dies, to leave their belongings to the person they have affection with. So two men have married and they have a house. They have a happy marriage. If one of those persons die right now, the other person cannot inherit that property, whatever it is. Same-sex marriage would allow that person to inherit his partner or her partner's property. That is what same-sex marriage is designed to do. It's not designed to legalize sex. So I think sometimes we misunderstand what it is trying to do, the problem it is trying to solve. We know there are homosexuals in this country. I don't think we should deny it. It happens. When you legalize the law or say yes or no, that's not going to change that. If you say tomorrow two men can't marry, you think they'll stop living together? They will still continue. So the law does not affect the practice. It simply affects the inheritance. I believe they should have a choice to do what they feel. As a Christian person, marriage is between a man and a woman. Thank you.
You each have a minute rebuttal.
Thank you, sir. Many of us, and I know of persons right here in the room that have had family members, even their children, who are or were at one time LGBTQ. Am I saying that correctly, or is it LGTB? No, it's BTQ. Should we ostracize our children? Should we cast our children aside because they have made a choice? Our society is built on the love of families, and so no court should be allowed to make that decision for us. Let us get that referendum in place, because we cannot afford to lose one single member of our family. We will not disgrace them. We will not cast them aside.
Thank you, Honorable Flax Charles.
I still think that it's a constitutional issue. I still think it comes down to the fundamental rights of a human person. But like every other country in the world, your country takes a position and a stance. And the stance must be respected. But however, you have to be able to strike the balance, because sometimes we run off with homosexuality as if people are different in terms of who them is. A man who murdered a person is the same person. I think where we need to be right now is we need to be to the point where I want to agree with Shireen on this one, where we have to take a referendum. But then the question is, would the referendum really solve the problem? You see what I'm saying? So if the referendum can't solve the problem, the only way to solve the problem is to respect every individual choice that he or she makes. The choice that you make may not be the one that I make, but I have to respect your choice. And I think that this is more of us having respect for each other. Once we respect each other, then yes, I don't eat shrimp, but I would eat chicken. But I have to respect the fact that you don't eat shrimp. So I think it's more of mutual respect, and then let us graduate. But that is a very loaded question. And
Thank you, Mr. Levens. And Mr. Vanterpool, you would like to respond.
Yes. Once again, I respect everyone's choice. But when it comes to something like that, keep it in the privacy of your home. I shouldn't be exposed to your type of indecent exposure at no time, no how. That's your private life. Keep it home. Some of us wouldn't even kiss our wives in public. So why then the same sex must display this type of this type of behavior in front of us? No. I know the majority of the public would not accept it. I thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vanterpool. We'll move on to the next question. And this question goes to Honorable Flax Charles. What plans do you have to move the 9th District forward economically? What plans do you have to move the 9th District forward economically?
Thank you. As I mentioned in my opening statement, I have a plan of action. The PVIM team has a plan of action. Youth empowerment is one of our focuses. We have to ensure that our youth are gainfully employed. Trained persons are able to work in any sector that they're trained in. We also need to have a business-friendly environment, Mr. Moderator. That is key to our economic success. Too many times we have young people who want to do a business and they're sidelined. It takes them a year to get a trade license, upward of 3 years. And yes, I was a junior minister of trade, but I told you how that junior minister thing works already. However, I believe that by empowering our young people, partnering with businesses that have been out there already, we can change the trajectory of our economic success in the territory. We need to create more industry. Why can't we have a small manufacturing factory here in the 9th District? We need to increase the production of agriculture. Just this evening, I had 12 dozen eggs come across on the ferry for a restaurant here on Virgin Gorda. And I've literally been doing that every week for quite a few months. There's a viable economic success in agriculture. We must be able to support our farmers. And when I say support our farmers, the question was brought before. There was support before it was taken away. But there must be different aspects of the recovery and our economic success.
Thank you, Honorable Flax Charles. We will now move on to Mr. Levens. What plans do you have to move the 9th District forward economically?
I think this is a very good question, and economically, we kind of have to look at what Virgin Gorda is. One of the things that Virgin Gorda is a high-end network destination. So one of the things that we have to do is we have to streamline the business process. In other words, we have to make the process efficient and easy in the charter industry for all the high-end network yacht owners who wants to come here and clear. They don't mind paying money, but one of the biggest problems in this country is high price but low levels of service. So I think that one of the things we have to do is look at the service. The other thing that we need to focus on to move this country forward is the public and private partnership. There are a lot of people out there that are willing to put money into investments, but I think we need to come to the table with a plan and with a strategy. And one of the investments that I see very lucrative in Virgin Gorda is the trails. We can invest in the trails. We could get Disney or one of them to come and build a trail system where you have hard, medium, and long, and then we could put restaurants there, and we could open up the economy and allow the local businesses as to be able to function. We can look at cycling. We can create in the South Song area trails of cycling. We could look at canoeing. There's a lot of things that we can look at to carry the economy forward. We could even look at agriculture as a basis in terms of having the agriculture and the farmers being able to have individuals that come and tour their crops and be able to have agriculture symposiums and be able to take the recyclable stuff and sell it. There are many things that we have to do in the 9th District, but the reality of the situation is we have to come to a point of priority, what it is that we really need to look at first. Because whilst we may have a lot of brilliant ideas, we have to have the infrastructure in place to support them.
Thank you, Mr. Levens. Honorable Wheatley.
Okay, my strategy is very straightforward. One of the first things we have to do, we have to get more government services in the 9th District. For example, if you don't have the Deputy Governor's Office presence here, you will never get a trust company in Virgin Gorda. So some government services must be present in the 9th District to encourage other businesses to come to Virgin Gorda. Most of these companies would prefer to be in the 9th District, but because of going backward and forward to Rotong to get services that are only on Tortola, they say until you get these services Virgin Gorda, we're going to remain on Tortola. The second thing we must fix is a better connection between the 9th District and Tortola. If you can get persons between the islands, Anegada and Tortola, at a more reasonable and more frequent rate, more persons will travel to these islands and therefore spend more money. My colleague touched on this other one here, the ease of doing business. For years I've been saying this. Doing business with government is too difficult. It takes too long. My friend here could tell you what she's waiting for a check for a long time. The other thing we must provide for our young entrepreneurs is financial training and business development. And then we have to diversify our economy. We have tourism in Virgin Gorda right now. Like my colleague just said, we could develop trails, we can have more persons doing something on the beaches, we can import more stuff to do trade. But the persons must have the necessary training and development to run and sustain a proper business. It is not rocket science. Let's start with the government services, let's start with transportation, and I think everything else should fall into place quite easily.
Thank you, Honorable Wheatley. Mr. Vanterpool.
I thank you. Presently, as it is right now, we have a cash drain in the 9th District, in particular, Virgin Gorda. We need to start to empower our citizens to own our businesses. Our tourism sector is our local economy. We need to start owning those boats and the villas. We need to release our people by first giving them that lands that they're deserving of and build villas that we could start to keep our economy, our monies back in here. That's the honest way we will grow as a people. Every one of our establishments here does not owned by us. We need to take the bull by its horns and get serious with it. That is how we go to empower our people, by taking control of our industry. We can do it, and we just need someone that will stand by the people, and when the people say this is the direction we need to go, we go forward, and we will be a rich nation. I thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vanterpool. As a reminder, we recommend that you use your rebuttal minute to refute a point that you may disagree with to make for a more interesting debate, don't you think? Any rebuttal for this segment? Honorable Flax Charles.
Well, Mr. Moderator, I think that we are all somewhat on the same page. But Richard Branson started his multi-million-dollar empire selling records out of the back of a car. All young people need to get together and invest together. We have persons that have taken a chance with business, but we also are not allowing our young people to make it easier for them to do business. I had a young lady just the other night. She wants to sell keychains, and the trade department is telling her she needs a storefront. Why? We are in 2023. She can sell those keychains online. And when you ask the question, show me where in the legislation it says that you need a storefront. It does not exist. All you hear is that, are your politicians always interfering? But we have to interfere because persons are making up rules as they go along.
Thank you, Honorable Flax Charles. Mr. Levens?
A point. I want to look at Anegada in terms of increasing business in Anegada. One of the things that we have to do is we have to create an intermodal transportation network. The ability for us to have the international flights and have Cape Air and those planes on Anegada. Because what this does, is the strategy is to push people through the airport. And in order to do this, what we have to do is we have to set up the facility. This is why I go back to my initial saying of infrastructure development, because Anegada needs to get proper infrastructure. You know what it is for a person to go to Anegada, check in at the Anegada counter, and have their baggage checked all the way through. So it goes back again to ease of access. The other thing too, with business is we need to free up the land to the people. There have been too much of promises about land and giving the lands. We really need to get zoning in place and get commercial lands in place so people could create the business and move the traffic through the country so that we can have the ability to actually scale the businesses that we have.
Thank you.
I cannot say rebut, but I have to add that if you have to get to empower persons, we have to provide easy access to finance also. That persons don't have to break the bank to start a business. Provide the access with all the safety nets that persons can get a reasonable loan and get a training to make sure when they get the money, the business they tend to do, they can undertake that business in a sustainable and in a successful manner. These things will go a long way towards creating economic development in the 9th District. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Vanderpool?
I thank you. Young lady, I don't know who you are, but my advice to you, if you wait for the government, you will get nowhere. Get set up and start to work. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you, thank you very much. Thank you, audience. The next question goes to Mr. Levens. Thank you, audience. Members of the audience, thank you. Mr. Levens, what qualities and characteristics make you the best possible candidate to represent the district?
I have the quality of integrity. I'm a young man with a vision and with a passion to move the district forward. I'm not a man who makes empty promises. Before I do that, I would communicate to you and explain to you that, listen, I cannot achieve what it is we set out. And I think the problem is not that politicians can't achieve things, or politicians, most politicians lose election because they lack communication with the people. They fail to communicate effectively to people and tell them that this cannot be achieved. I also think that we need to educate ourselves in terms of our expectations and how we manage our expectations. But don't let me stray from the point. What makes me the good candidate is that I am I have a vision, I have intelligence, and what I do is I apply real strategy. I look at the situation on the ground and try to put something that is realistic in place. And also too, I am a person that you can communicate effectively to. I'm not an individual that you should ever be afraid to approach. I'm a very approachable person.
Thank you, Mr. Levens. Honorable Wheatley, what qualities and characteristics make you the best possible candidate to represent the district?
First of all, having worked for the government, I'm a retired public officer. I have a significant knowledge of the procedures of government and how government really functions, unlike my other colleagues here, some who never really worked in government. I worked in government at a very high level, from minister down to senior public officer. I have the experience of serving the people through my knowledge of how government works. I'm also a people's person. I'm a very friendly, charismatic person. Everybody likes me, even at school. Children love me to death. When I walk by the school, every child I want to hug. So I'm so approachable. I also have a passion for helping people. I will give you the last dollar out of my pocket to help you. I would do that. That's the kind of person I am. And I'm very results-oriented. I tackle problems. Sometimes persons don't understand my approach, but when they come to me with a problem, I have to internalize the problem and come with an approach. And during that time, it's contemplation time. So I might not be responding to you. It may think I'm not solving the problem, but I'm trying to figure out the best way to attack that problem. I have traveled all over the world representing the government. So I have that experience under my belt locally, regionally, and internationally, dealing with these various clienteles. But my biggest one, I'm a people's person. People love me, and I love them back. Love knows love. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Wheatley. Mr. Vanterpool, what qualities and characteristics make you the best possible candidate to represent this district?
My qualities that I bring is qualities from 100 years old. I was brought up in a home where a good name is far better than riches. I was taught not to lie, misuse, abuse, or take advantage of people, and I carry that through my whole entire life. I am a helpful person. I will take my last and give you and do it out. And that's what I think makes me the best candidate for this district.
Thank you, Mr. Vanterpool. Honorable Flax Charles, what qualities and characteristics make you the best possible candidate to represent this district?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. What sets me above the rest is that I am always accessible. I return calls. I get back to you if I can't answer you at that particular time. I give myself 2 days to return calls. If I can help, I will help. If I cannot help, I will point you in the right direction. I am a voice going against the grain, going against a party system when others toe the line. I am about the people. The people are the ones that put me here and not 12 members in the House of Assembly. I am young. Yes, I am young. And I have experience, not only in tourism, but in business. I also have experience in culinary and hospitality. I am a fighter. I'm a warrior. I am a walking machine. I walk morning, noon, and night for you, the people. And you can attest to that.
Thank you, Honorable Flax Charles. Here's your minute allotment to refute Honorable Wheatley's point of being the most friendly. Anyone? So you agree he's the most friendly?
I am the most friendly.
Okay.
And I don't know who can dispute that. I have traveled the whole of the BVI. And you know, I see some Anegadians in the audience and they brave the waters to get here. When I get off of that ferry, sometimes the wind is blowing, trying to blow me off the ferry. And they say, man, you come over here and all of that weather? I said, what weather? Anything for the people of Anegada. I can't miss a beat. Call me in the middle of the night. Call me in the middle of the day. Shireen Flax Charles is here for you. No one can dispute that. And I say that without apology. Recently, I was able to assist a young man who fell from his second floor. And I really am so thankful that when I spoke to his mother,
Thank you,
and
Honorable Flax
Sister
Charles.
Day was so happy that he is doing so much better today.
Thank you. And we wish the young man a speedy recovery. Mr. Levens.
No, I have to take this mic today because Mr. Vincent is telling me he's results oriented. So I just needed to kind of explain the level of results that he had over the last 4 years so I could have a clearer picture and an understanding as to these results that he had been producing. And Ms. Flax, with all due respect, I know that you say that you are a part of a system, but Ms. Flax, you wait until you get to the end of a period with a government to turn off and tell me why, when the situation happened in April, that you didn't turn off and stand up and show your level of integrity. And I'm going to be honest, this is why Kyle Evans got to come in the race. Because Kyle Evans ain't standing on empty promises. Kyle Evans standing up to represent you, because I am a man of integrity. I walk away when I didn't like the things that they was doing, and I stand my ground and band my belly to do that, because I had to do that to maintain my integrity, because you could get back another job, but you could never get back your integrity.
Thank you, Mr. Levens.
Well, I have to answer.
Members of the audience.
Well, I'll go right to this doorstep to answer this question. When I came into office, I met the Anegada land debacle, 130-year-old problem. And right now, as we sit in this house, there are 200 land titles and leases sitting in the ministry, just waiting to give the people of Anegada. That was a result of the work that I did. That's only one example, because you live in Anegada. Well, I'm not in the ministry right now, but there are 200 land titles and leases ready to give out. The reason why they might come before election, because they're afraid I might get a credit. But the punishing you people trying to spite me is bad-mindedness. I get things done.
All right. We will move on to the next question. Honorable Wheatley, you will take this one. There has been much discussion regarding the Retiring Allowances Legislative Service Amendment Act 2021, locally referred to as the Greedy Bill. What are your views on this? Let me repeat that. There has been much discussion regarding the Retiring Allowances Legislative Service Amendment Act 2021, locally referred to as the Greedy Bill. What are your views on this?
Thank you for that question, because I have a unique perspective on that question. Having been around my father-in-law, Honorable Neil, for around 30 years, I heard this topic being discussed for that time. And they were all saying, if they do that to look after themselves, the public will kill them. So they all refused to do that bill. But at the same time, we watch retired politicians suffer, lose their land, lose their houses. The bill came from good intent. Now, if the bill needs some tweaking, I have absolutely no problem tweaking that bill. But the bill came from good intent, having seen persons suffer. Because after public life, you don't believe the kind of treatment person may meet out against you. Because when you're making decisions, you're going to make enemies in that process. And some persons can't wait for you to be out of office to give it to you. They can't wait. That's how people are. So it came from good intentions to protect those persons, not us, but those to come. Those young persons to come, it was more to protect them. Having seen the older folks suffer after being in office, give of all their life and resources. Now you're out of office, you're put aside like a rug. So I said, it came from a place of good intention. If it needs tweaking, let us tweak it. These are all people who've sacrificed their lives for this country. We cannot just throw them aside like they want nothing now, like a dog or a cat or something. It came from good intention. But if it needs tweaking, let us tweak it. But it's all people we're talking about. Could be your children someday who will be where I am today. You wouldn't want to throw them aside as if they were worth nothing when they were in the job. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Wheatley. Mr. Vanterpool, the question goes to you. There has been much discussion regarding the Retiring Allowances Legislative Service Amendment Act 2021, locally referred to as the Greedy Bill. What are your views on this?
Thank you. If that is good intentions, I don't want to see the bad intentions. Definitely. That needs to be repealed and go back to where our ancestors headed. I have not seen no politician suffered because the majority of our politicians have served the minimum, probably 4 terms. One of 2, we had went 1 term. Obviously, they did not perform and their constituency took them out. Tell you, okay, you ain't doing nothing, go home and do nothing. And that is my take on it. It needs to be repealed.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Vanterpool. Honorable Flax Charles.
Thank you so much. Yes, I did vote for that bill, and I have said it on more than one occasion. Hindsight, there needs to be a repeal, especially of the second part of the bill, for those of you who might have read the bill. I lobbied for a contributory pension fund for legislators. When you work for a company for 4 years, you should be paying into a pension. The labor code speaks to that. So the law is being broken throughout the territory because we have many employers that do not have a pension plan. Now, former legislators, I have had to help them pay their light bill. It is what you call a PEP, politically exposed person. When you are elected and then you're not re-elected, many times you cannot get a job anywhere. And that should not be. Yes, we live in a small society. And don't pay attention to what persons are saying. Get the facts. Because legislators really don't make a lot of money. The PSs are the ones that really clean up. They clean up. But as I said before, I worked with the tourist board for years. And every pay period, they paid something, I paid something. That is what needs to happen. What irked me was the fact that persons who were already re-elected did not want to go down that route because they felt that we have to pay our dues. We're working 20 hours a day, 16, 18 hours a day. And there should be a pension plan in place that is contributory, meaning $10 come out of my check, the government pays $10.
Thank you, Honorable
And yes,
Flax Charles.
it needed to be repealed, and that will happen when a BIM government is elected.
Thank you. Mr. Levens, same question.
Let me put it to you quite blunt. The intention of the bill was not a good intention. And let me tell you why. For Honorable Flax and Honorable Vincent, the strategy of appointing a deputy to be able to take out of the bill maximum amount of money shows me that the bill was not intentionally designed to help the legislators. It was designed to facilitate the movement of money. 1, there is a pension act in this country that requires reformation. It is a simple fix. Amend the pension scheme to include the civil servants. How dare are you sit down here and tell me that the civil servants don't deserve to get paid, but you set the thing in motion for politicians to take out all the money? No, I stop all your nonsense coming before the people, telling the people them ignorance of thought and mind, but good intention, Mr. Vincent. No, I rebuke you with that kind of concept. If we're going to do something, let me structure it the right way. Civil servants need to get paid. And all that have to happen is you allocate You allocate a division for politicians and let politicians contribute to the same pension fund that the civil servants them have to contribute, because they too they do the legwork. It ain't politicians that they do the legwork. The legwork is being done by the civil servants, and they too need a contributory pension plan. So I am telling her, you don't sit down here tonight and put nonsense in the people's mind about a bill was set. You sign the bill. You know exactly where you put your signature to the bill. You put your signature to the bill, Honorable Shireen, and you put your signature, Honorable Vincent. Don't come with no lame excuses, but we need to reform. If you need to reform, why one eye didn't stand up and say, me signing the bill? Okay. And I put the passion in it tonight, you know why? Because I want you to see the problem that we're experiencing. I want you to see the problem. If we are not careful, if we are not careful, then we're going to lose our country. And I'm saying this to you tonight. That bill needs to be repealed. That bill had no good intentions for the people of the British Virgin Islands and any politician.
Thank you, Mr. Levens. As a general reminder, members of the audience, please remain respectful of the candidates when they're making their presentations. Again, we are asking that you hold applause. Thank you. We will now open the floor for rebuttal.
Okay, you kind of confused me there when you start talking about the public service and the elected person. The two separate, they're apples and oranges. So I wouldn't even go no further with that. The bill was good intention for legislators. I have seen them suffer. I have seen them suffer. It was good intention. If it needs to tweak, I have no problem tweaking it. If you want to repeal it and modify it, I have no issue at all with that. But one of these days you might be in the house, and hopefully you'll get it one of these days, you know. You'll see things differently when you come inside here. You're outside now, so I'll pardon you for that. The Labor Code speaks to pension as well as severance. But the Labor Code gives a choice. It's pension or severance. I think we should move away from severance and make it pension. I fully agree with that for workers. I fully support that. It's something I would seek to do. Because severance isn't working. Severance can be easily calculated, but nobody does it. So you have an employee working for you for 20 years, we're not going to be severed, there is no
Thank you,
money.
Honorable Wheatley. Any other contribution in the rebuttal stage?
Mr. Weekly, I want to say that as a politician working on behalf of the people, politicians need to be able to pay into a scheme. We just categorize them and calculate it different. But they need to also pay into a scheme. It is not about the position I take when I get in. It's about a position that is fair all across the board. So I understand your passion, but the reality of the situation is the greedy bill should have been structured to look something like a pension fund where everybody could contribute. If you put a different category for politicians and the calculation is a bit different, that's fine. But to set a severance package in pay, my good friend, and then to employ a strategy that allows you to maximize it shows bad faith. It does not show good faith, and that's my position.
Mr. Vanterpool.
I'm a retired civil servant. I put in 26 years, and I work for mines. I came off with 5 injured discs, and I got no compensation for that injury. I'm not against anyone being compensated for what they work, but I am saying our forefathers already had it set for 2 terms. Let us leave it where it is. Those politicians like Theodore Faulkner, who restored this legislative council back to these countries that we could enjoy a democracy, which it has turned out now to be a dictatorship. They are rolling over in their graves. I guarantee you that. With vexation of spirit. It is time for us to think about the public.
Thank you, Mr. Vanterpool. Honorable Flax Charles.
Some of us sit up here on a pedestal with a halo over their head and behave as if they haven't made one mistake in their life. Sometimes inexperience creates that. And I will say, I am humble enough to say that a mistake was made. You trusted those persons who were in the house before you to guide you and lead you. Never again. I stayed there because I felt I could do more in a majority. I stayed there because I felt that we needed to save our country, especially after the 28th of April. But sometimes you have to distance yourself from family. And that is what I had to do to save myself, but to save the country first. And persons need to understand that. Sometimes you stick around, you take abuse.
Thank you.
And I did that, but no more.
Thank you, Honorable Flax Charles. We're going to move on to the final question in round 2, after which we're going to go to a 5-minute recess. This question goes to you, Mr. Vanterpool. Members of the audience, please be quiet. What is your view on the Rastafarian community being allowed recreational and sacramental use of cannabis? And as a member of the next House of Assembly, what position will you take on the decriminalization of marijuana?
I have relax in my head, but I'm not a Rasta man. I never smoke cannabis. So, like I say, the Bible tells us, St. Paul said, every man to his order. We have laws against it. You want to smoke your marijuana, you can smoke it in your privacy of your home. When you come now and you take that out in the public, it's a different story. The law has to be upheld, and that's my take. Keep it private, I'm okay with it.
Thank you, Mr. Vanterpool. Honorable Flax Charles, do you want me to repeat or you're okay?
Please repeat.
What is your view on the Rastafarian community being allowed recreational and sacramental use of cannabis? And as a member of the next House of Assembly, what position will you take on the decriminalization of marijuana?
If we go to the Constitution, it speaks to freedom of choice. It speaks to freedom of religion. I have experienced, for many years after I met my husband, I had to get permission for him to come to the BVI because he was wearing dreadlocks. Discrimination. And I believe that persons have a choice to make. There are many studies out there that speak to medicinal marijuana. Alcohol creates many challenges in our society, and you're not hearing enough about that. And sometimes I believe that when something is legalized, persons, it's not taboo anymore. It's not exciting anymore. I've never smoked in my life, but in the BVI, we sometimes practice too many discriminatory practices. I had the experience where I was asked to bring a letter from a priest saying that my children are practicing a particular religion. One had locks and one had braids. So I told the education department, you need to get a letter from every child at Brigada Flax Educational Center. We cannot continue to have discriminatory practices in this territory. We have seen it on CNN. There's a documentary that speaks to the good uses of marijuana. And anything that is abused will create a problem. But there is evidence out there. There's a young man that's getting seizures every 5 minutes, and it is proven that medicinal marijuana helps. So again, if we want to go to a referendum, let's do that. But I believe that marijuana can help certain persons with health issues that they may have.
Thank you, Honorable Flax Charles. Mr. Levens? Sure, I'll repeat. What is your view on the Rastafarian community being allowed recreational and sacramental use of cannabis? And as a member of the next House of Assembly, what position will you take on the decriminalization of marijuana?
Interesting question, because the question before about homosexuality is dressed up in the same fashion of individuals having the right to make a choice. Now, decriminalizing of marijuana for people personal use and consumption, I would agree to. But it must be structured, because you have a lot of youths in prison for the importation of marijuana because it is illegal. So it will require education. It will require some sort of rehabilitation strategy back into the actual community. And it would require legislation to ensure that if they're smoking, that they can only smoke in certain areas. However, just like homosexuality, an individual have the freedom of choice to engage in his religion and his religion practices. So as long as we understand that, then I can support the concept of decriminalization, but it must be structured that it doesn't cause any offset or off balance to the society, because some people, because people been to prison, would not want them to come back into the society and be able to get a job. So it is important that integration be key in order for them to be able to be integrated back into the society. So yes, I would take the position of decriminalization for personal consumption. We also have to work out how the marijuana gets into the country and how they actually get it, you know, so, and what quantities can be imported before it is considered something illegal. So yes, I would agree to it, but I would agree to it, and I would agree to a structured approach to doing it that would benefit those that are in prison and those that on the job place, that would take them back and integrate them back into the society. Because again, individuals can be smoking and being on people's jobs. Certain jobs require certain competencies and certain ability. So it's something that has to be thought out, but I think that for personal use and consumption, if the question is decriminalization for personal use and consumption, I would agree to that.
Thank you, Mr. Levins. Honorable Wheatley. Sure. What is your view on the Rastafarian community being allowed recreational and sacramental use of cannabis? And as a member of the next House of Assembly, what position will you take on the decriminalization of marijuana?
Well, we do have freedom of religion. I'm not sure why you would just select one particular group and say you can do it, but nobody else can. I think if you're going to address marijuana, it should be universal and holistic. And I would support recreational and medicinal marijuana. But it has to come with particular things in place, because when you start making these things legal, you have to also consider the implications and ramifications of it. So there must be a special tax imposed that would mitigate against the ill effects caused by this new activity. Because once you make it decriminalized, more persons might be tempted to use it. Therefore, the social ills that this might bring on, we have to make sure there's a tax in place to mitigate against them. Marijuana is a medicine, and many medicines that we use are made from marijuana. Think of cannabinol used for glaucoma. There's cannabis oil and so forth for asthma. Sometimes for oils and so forth. So it's not a taboo thing. The thing we have to be mindful of when you start up on recreational and particularly recreational, is that it is not abused. It's highly regulated, and there must be funding put aside, whether through taxes or whatever, to mitigate against the social ills that this might bring on. But I'm totally for decriminalizing it for persons for small portions, for whatever reason they want to use. But again, their right to use marijuana should not infringe upon my right to be free from it. It should not. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Wheatley. The floor is open for rebuttal. All right. This brings us to the end of our second segment. We're going to move now into a 5-minute recess, and when we return, we'll take questions from the audience. Thank you. As you retake your seats, I would like to remind our debaters that in this final round, you will be allotted 2 minutes to respond to your question and the usual 1 minute rebuttal allotment. Ladies and gentlemen, we welcome back to the platform our debaters. Please put your hands together for Mr. Vernon Vanterpool, Independent District 9 candidate. Honorable Shireen Flax-Charles of the Progressive Virgin Islands Movement. Mr. Coy Levens of the National Democratic Party. And incumbent representative, Honorable Vincent Wheatley of the Virgin Islands Party. We will now continue with Honorable Flax-Charles. First question in our final round. If you're not elected, how do you plan to stay relevant in the district? Hold time.
That's a very easy question because I have been relevant in the district for the last 50 years. Everyone in the room knows this. I have already started working with a choir, the Virgin Gorda Community Chorale. I intend to continue going to Anegada on a regular basis because I am not about just being elected. I am about working for the people, building a better community. And so I have always been very visible. My intention is to continue to have a youth committee, a women's committee, a business committee that will lead the district. Because we should not have politicians leading us. We, the people, must lead and say what we want. And I intend also to ensure that we have some sort of autonomy with a district council. I will also work tirelessly to see that affordable, real affordable housing is achieved for young people and others. Simply because it's been talked about and we get up here and we talk. And it has to be about action. And sometimes it's not about taking a picture, it's about working for the people. And so I intend to be elected. If for some strange reason it doesn't happen, then you will be seeing the same amount of me as you have seen for the last 40, 50 years. Because we are community minded and I intend to continue working for the people all the time. It's not about always building a building or paving a road. It's about the communication that you have with the people and helping them to move forward in their lives.
Thank you, Honorable Flax-Charles. Mr. Levens, same question to you. If not elected, how do you plan to stay relevant in the district?
Well, I must first say that this journey is new to me. And in making this journey, I have built a lot of relationships. I've met a lot of people. And I have kind of communicated with them. So if I am not elected, and I put in a big if, the reality of the situation is simply the fact that I would continue to be an advocate. Whoever is elected, they have my solemn promise that Coy Levens will walk along with them to be the voice of reasoning for the people and also to keep the politicians in check also. But I would also reach out. I will also continue to come because this is new to me. You know, I help a lot of people, but I do that behind the scenes. But I realize sometimes you have to tell your story so people could know who you really is in this life. So for me, I would always be a people's person. I will come around the district because it will be hypocritical of me. For people that know me and know my character, they know that Koi is a person who will always help you. Anybody that knows Koi, they will tell you one thing about Koi. Koi would deny himself for you to go. And that ain't no nonsense. You could ask anybody that knows me. So for me, this is not relevant. This is who I am. This come natural to me. I've been doing this before I decided to take on this political path. But as an individual, I will walk along with my passion, which is the environment. I walk along with my passion, which is aviation and the airports. And I will support anyone that is in office because that is the mature thing for any individual to do.
Thank you, Mr. Levens. Honorable Wheatley.
Well, having already given almost 30 years of my life to public service, 25 as a public officer, it would be awkward to become irrelevant in this community where I've lived and served for so long. As a past teacher, teaching is still in me, and I believe I would embark on finishing my book, my history book, to make sure it's a book about the history of Virgin, very specific, to make sure the younger ones understand how Virgin got to where Virgin is right now. Capturing that part of our history is very, very important to me. As also a past musician, I would probably get back into my music again and into church. But that's for another couple of years down the road, so I have time to plan that. What happened after being elected? That's a long time down the road for me. So I have immediate plans on that.
Okay. We'll just have to wait to read the book. Mr. Vanterpool.
I will be visible in the community. I just getting reacquainted with some of my old friends from the early 80s as far back as 79. But I don't think, I didn't come in this race not to win. I am taking this district by a storm. Don't watch the quietness. I'm coming through. I thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vanterpool. I appreciate your response. The floor is open if there is any rebuttal from... We'll move on to the next question. There appears to be no effective zoning laws in place to protect homeowners in residential areas. How do you plan to address this? Will the land finally be allocated for industrial use? This question will go to Mr. Levens. I'll repeat it if you want me to. There appears to be no effective zoning laws in place to protect homeowners in residential areas. How do you plan to address this? Will the land finally be allocated for industrial use? It's a two-part question.
Okay, so the first part is the zoning of property. In order to facilitate zoning, one has to have a strategy in place. One has to be able to have a master plan as to where we carry in our country, where the commercial areas will be, where the national parks will be, where the recreational lands would be. And then once we as a country and as a people could make that determination, then we zone. It's the same concept at the airport. You have to zone lands as for the protection of the protected surfaces. So zoning is key because zoning is something that allows you to organize and to structure the way that your country grows. In terms of industrial areas and lands, if I understand the question right, the question is where the allocation of industrial lands would be?
Will you finally allocate land for industrial use?
Well, that again, to my good friend, comes back to the government strategy. We just can't allocate lands for use without having a proper plan in place to ensure that the land is fit for purpose. So I would have to remain neutral on that question.
Honorable Wheatley.
Well, having been the victim of exactly what you discussed there, I fully support zoning because zoning preserves value. I had a hog farm built next to my apartment a long time ago, and no matter how I addressed this issue with town planning and all the authorities, they felt powerless to do it. And I didn't see how a developing country could let a hog farm be built in the middle of a residential neighborhood. So I fully support zoning. The issue we have, if it's most parts of the BVI, except for Enegada, it's almost too late. See, sometimes persons feel once they have property, whatever they want to do should be able to be done there. The question you brought of industrial zone, it is the correct way to go. There should be crown land or some land somewhere that says, in this area here is where you have your garages, is where you have your this, your that, your the other. I fully support that. It's just not practical in some places right now. You can't necessarily go on road tongue and tell somebody, I can zone here now to do X, Y, Z. It's already built up. Persons want to do what they want to do on the land that they have. We don't often appreciate that zoning preserves the value of what you have. I fully support zoning where possible, particularly in new developments. For example, there's a gentleman who wants some land up around Harkiven side. I said to him, I cannot give you the land yet. We have to create a zoning law for the area. So you don't build a villa here, and the man next to you want a garage, and the next one want a hog farm, and the other one want to fight roosters next door. We must plan, like Corey said, we must plan what is going to happen in that area and make sure that we enforce it, that nobody goes, stiff penalties, that nobody goes against what the law says is supposed to happen there. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Wheatley. Mr. Vanterpool, same question to you. There appears to be no effective zoning laws in place to protect homeowners in residential areas. How do you plan to address this? Will you finally allocate land for industrial use?
If that is the desire of the majority of the people of the district, definitely I will allocate lands with their guidance for that industrial lands. Because, like, I can't do it alone. They will have to tell me, this is where we would like to earmark these lands for that purpose, and I will follow behind the people. I thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vanterpool. Honorable Flax Charles. There appears to be no effective zoning laws in place to protect homeowners in residential areas. How do you plan to address this? Will the land finally be allocated for industrial use?
There must be an analysis to determine suitable areas for such. I can tell you a quick story. There's a young man that's washing cars down by the chateau, and I have to admire him. I really do. He said to me, Miss Flax, I was in jail, and I came out and I decided I wasn't going back, and I will walk. Some days I wash one car, but some days I wash 20. We need to find a space for this young man in an industrial park where his car can be washed, where he can wash cars. We need to find spaces for the young ladies that are making candles, that are making soaps, where they can then elevate themselves after a time into a multi-million-dollar business. But the fact that he has decided to stick it out because he needs to make a living, it is my responsibility to ensure that this happens. Now, I will tell you, I call town planning almost every day. And they come, they inspect, they know the problem, they do nothing. The legislation needs more teeth. And that is something that needs to be brought to the fore. Trade is another problem, because trade also has inspectors. And if someone comes with an application for a bar in the middle of a residential area, that should be a red flag. Because I've had persons calling me on a nightly. They cannot sleep because this bar is generating so much noise. And I have spoken to trade about this on many an occasion. Every day I'm on the phone trying to out these fires. And the enforcement, the police needs to be able to enforce their noise abatement. There's a noise abatement act, and the police needs to enforce that act as well.
Thank you, Honorable Flax Charles. Any rebuttal? Mr. Levens?
The allocation of lands and the industrial part of the question we just can't say industrial. I think what needs to happen is we need to have a plan. This whole problem of lands and residential and commercial is mixing is because we don't have a plan. And because we don't have a master plan, you cannot zone property if you don't have a master plan. And I think that if we want to speak about industrial, then we have to even determine what type of industries we have. We have to think about the pollution to the atmosphere, where you would position it, where the wind direction coming from. So this is a much bigger discussion than just let's zone the area. I think government has to develop a national plan and implement a national plan and make sure that they zone the particular areas to actually carry out that plan. This is a much higher level discussion and a very loaded question that we have here today. And that question of zoning the lands is what is causing a lot of problems. I know people in Enigada that have a house but a man got chicken farm next to it. I know people that have, and once you allow this to continue, it is very difficult to break the trend.
Thank you, Mr. Levins. Honorable Charles.
What I would say to the audience and everyone out there are many plans already. There have been charrettes done. There are all sorts of plans out there sitting on some shelf gathering dust. And I know this because I've spoken to the chief planner. And as the PVIM team will be dusting off those plans, updating them, and putting things into place so that all of us can earn a living, but at the same time, we need to have a little peace and quiet and an environment that's friendly and healthy for all of us in the 9th district. The plans are there. We just need to execute, and that will happen with the PVIM team. We have the expertise in place.
Mr. Vanderpool.
I have watched that young man down by the chateau washing his cars, and bells start going off in my head, and I say, that is government property. What will happen to him when the government is ready to take over? So I start to think, he needs to be moved in the future, but we have to have some place to put him and the mechanics also, so we can make a bay, a depot, have each one have their bay, car washing, mechanics, and we all know when we go to get our Jahphix, we're going to one central location. And some might say it ain't working, but I might not carry my car to John, but I'm going to carry it to Harry, so all of us will have our customers, but just it is, we're in the one location, and we could even pool.
Thank you, Mr. Vanderpool. Honorable Wheatley.
I was just saying that we've chosen this very small problem here, but there are several dozen problems that needs addressing, like zoning. That's why the VAP government developed the National Sustainable Development Plan. This plan seeks to look at all the issues and come up with a strategy for addressing them. That is why we did it. So you can't go piecemeal, picking a little zoning problem here and a little problem there. Let's look at all of these problems and put them in one document, the National Sustainable Development Plan. I ask all of you, please, before Elections Day, go and take a look at that document. It contains this as well as other issues of the use of lands and the use of space and everything else around the BVI. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Wheatley. And our next question comes to you. When can we expect vulnerability assessments and population census to be prioritized? When can we expect vulnerability assessments and population census to be prioritized?
I think the last census we did was in 2012. If you're going to develop a country, if you're going to plan for sewage, if you're going to plan for schooling, education, health, the basis will be population. It is a priority right now. That was taken account of in the National Sustainable Development Plan. It needs to be a priority right now. You cannot plan nothing for this country properly until you know what your population is projected to be. What it is right now and what is projected to be. That census is long overdue. It needs to happen right away. We have to be a data-driven government. That's what I support. You're making decisions based on real data, not guesswork. We always guess not about how you feel, get emotional about things and this and that. Let us be informed about things. A census would inform what your current population is and will also give you the projection for what's going to be down the road. So I fully support that to be a priority right now.
Thank you, Honorable Wheatley. Mr. Vanterpool, when can we expect vulnerability assessments and population census to be prioritized?
I don't know much about the prioritizing part, but all of my life I know it to be a government initiative, and I don't see why it should have to be prioritized if the government is already doing a good job at that. I think it could probably need a little more tweeting to be more accurate, but I think it's good like it is. Good. Maybe we shouldn't privatize it.
Okay. Honorable Flax-Charles, when can we expect vulnerability assessments and population census to be prioritized?
As it relates to the vulnerability assessments, I recall DDM has been working on some of those assessments. When it comes to the census, if I recall, the last census was around 2010, and it wasn't completed either. It started, but to my recollection, it wasn't completed. I have written, I have vocalized my request for a census. Priority must be now. But when you have a system of government where the backbenchers are the majority and the cabinet is in the minority, but the 5 cabinet members are the ones that really end up making the decision, only 3 of those persons have to vote yes for it to happen. There must be a will for that to happen. We cannot continue down a road with no information. For instance, how much revenue comes in it is generated in the 9th district, and what percentage of it does the 9th district get back? That is a question that all of us need to ask. And so a census needs to happen. The vulnerability study is ongoing, but we also need to look at what climate change is doing to us. I read today there are 13 storms is expected during the hurricane season this year. And we are going to pray a lot, but when God wants to clean up a place, we cannot stop him or her. But we must be prepared. And the data has to come in for the census so that we're able to make decisions not based on hearsay, but on real life data. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Flax-Charles. Mr. Levens, when can we expect vulnerability assessments and population census to be prioritized?
Vulnerability assessments is done, as my counterparts say, under the Department of Disaster Management. In order for you to be able to assess a risk, you have to assess the probability to understand how vulnerable you are in terms of what that risk particularly is. So the concept of vulnerability assessment, yes, in terms of disaster, we have done it, but vulnerability assessments also need to be done for the country. Financially, it needs to be done for the population. Now, population is a very important part of any country's economy because you have to ensure that what you have in place is the data. Because one of the biggest issues you have is we have outdated data. Many times when I used to run analysis, I used to want to see what the population is. But the problem is the integrity of the data is not good. So sometimes you have to take a sample in order for you to be able to at least project what it is that you want to do. Additionally, we have to look at the population because one of the greater issues we have in this country is the high cost of living. So the strategy that you could employ when you have a census is you can actually determine, well, how can I expand the economy a little bit to spread the cost over the population to reduce the cost of living in the country. So I go back to my original point. One of the biggest problems that this territory have, and this is another problem on a large scale, is data collection. How does the tourist board assess where the passengers coming from? How do you set up your satellite office? So this is a much bigger question, but I agree. I am one who will support the census assessment and the vulnerability assessment. I think we need to take the vulnerability assessments beyond the disaster management and do risk assessments for every stage of any investment or strategy that we employ.
Thank you. Mr. Levins, rebuttal?
Not a rebuttal. I need some clarity. I should have asked you in the beginning, what kind of vulnerability assessment was the person referring to, like disaster or health? I really thought it was health before, and I didn't address it.
Well, this question came from the audience, and I just read it.
So I'll assume you meant a disaster assessment. As I said, a very ongoing thing. We did one, I think, in 20 after the hurricanes, and that's why we increased the insurance and for government in the country, I think from 20 million to what, 70 or 80 million dollars. In case there's a strong earthquake, which is overdue, the BVA will get a chunk of change from this insurance that we have. So assessments are ongoing through DDM and other bodies also, international bodies, for various risks, like the risk of sea level rise, climate change, earthquakes, and other events that may take place that may adversely affect the territory. These are ongoing all the time. Thank you.
We will move on to question 4. This question is for Mr. Vanterpool. Mr. Vanterpool, what do you think are the 3 most realistic and achievable things that need to be done on behalf of District 9 residents immediately following elections? What do you think are the 3 most realistic, achievable things that need to be done on behalf of District 9 residents immediately following elections?
1, implementing a proper evacuation for emergencies. 2, putting hands in the lands of the people. 3, restoring our educational system. I thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vanterpool. Honorable Flax Charles, what do you think are the 3 most realistic and achievable things that need to be done on behalf of District 9 residents immediately following elections?
Thank you. The reallocation of funds, because it's done all the time, to ensure that access for medical evacuations are realized. We cannot continue to go down a road with no end. And funds have been allocated for all measure of things. And so every life is important. And so that is something that can be done when elected. And it is something that we can guarantee will be done as a PVIM government who understands the healthcare system. Housing, because we already have developers, conversations with the bank, the land is there. Land has been graded, cleared, etc. already. We must make it a priority. No longer can we continue to say to persons, you need to write a letter to try to get a piece of land. We have a plan where you'll be able to acquire housing at a moderate rate. And youth empowerment, I believe that that is so achievable. Young people only want you to see that they care and that you're making inroads into what their career path may be. I had the opportunity to work with a young man in Tortola till sometimes my husband was saying, well, you have a child that I don't know about. But the fact remains that we have to empower our young people. We need to bring them together, sit down with them, have the conversations, know what their needs and wants are, and sometimes it's simple as a little music workshop. So we have to work with the young people to give them what they need.
Thank you, Honorable Flax Charles. Mr. Levens, what do you think are the three most realistic and achievable things that need to be done on behalf of the 9th District residents immediately following elections?
I think one of the first things for me is to ensure that the infrastructure in terms of employees and trained personnel is in place. We can't be living in a society that have a demographic, back to the sentence again, have a demographic of people that are seniors and we don't have the medical care in place to ensure that they can be treated in the comfort of the district. For Anegada, I think we need to commit ourselves as a government to ensure that we have the airlift in place, because Anegada is the most northerly island, which means to say you have to cross 22 miles of water. So we need, as a government, to ensure that we have some sort of memorandum of understanding in place for proper medical evacuations. One of the things I want to do too is I want to look at the social issues that a lot of people are going through, because the reality is, a lot of us living, but we're living from paycheck to paycheck, and some of us are, and some people are single parents. There's a lot of mothers and people who are single parent going through the situation of needing assistance to be able to help them, because sometimes men fail to play the role that they are to play. So I think we need to look at the social issues. And my other point that I would look to, I agree, is youth empowerment. In speaking with the youth, a lot of the youths, them want a direction. They want some sort of mentorship. And I think as simple as these things may be, the mentorship program for the youth is very important, because we can't promote the concept of the youths are the people of tomorrow, but yet we don't put nothing in place to show them or to build the confidence in them that they are the seeds of tomorrow.
Thank you. Honorable Wheatley.
The operative words there are realistic and achievable. I think the first thing we could do is our road infrastructure. All of us, as well as visitors, we travel on the roads in the 9th District. Public works are there, and this can be done very, very quickly once you put the pushing on it. The second thing that's achievable and realistic is expanded medical services on both Anegada and Virgin Gorda. There's no reason why the medical services are exactly the way they are. There's no reason why Anegada has a doctor just 4 days a week. It should be at least 6. There's no reason why the clinic Natsong can't have a nurse or doctor stationed there 7 days a week. This is very achievable and very realistic. The last one is lands distribution. I know because I worked on it. I know what I left there, and that can be done very, very quickly. If you're going to empower people, one of the easiest ways is through land ownership. And of course, the housing can come. I have that experience. I met an old plan when I got to the ministry with Joe's Hill. I walked the plan I met there, saw all the errors that were made. We can do affordable housing in the 9th District. I have the experience of being through it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any rebuttal? Mr. Levens.
Honorable Weekly, how much proposed lands you have for the residents of Virgin Gorda in the making?
We have a number of lots in the copper mine area. We have lots we started in the Bond. The next one will be in the Great Hill. One of the things we have no shortage of in Virgin Gorda is crown land. I got the distribution policy in place. There are monies to put in the roads and get the surveys done. When I go back, I'll make sure I finish that up. 1st o'clock.
So they will be able to get them lands very shortly?
With block and parcel, not paper stupid promises.
Thank you very much.
Honorable Flax Charles.
Land is good, but if you can't afford to pay the architect for the drawing, it sits there for years. Imagine someone making 30, 35,000 a year, and you have to pay 15,000 for this drawing. The investors are here, the developers are here, the contractors are here. The land, of course, is here, and we will have a plan ready to roll out where persons are able to get a home. You give somebody 2-3 acres of land, that's all well and good. Where is the capital now to develop it? 7 days a week for doctors in Anegada is a must. It shouldn't be 4, it shouldn't be 6. Anegadians pay taxes just like us here, and they should not be treated as second-class citizens. But then again, too, I was told that the roads on Virgin Gorda and Anegada are the best in the BVI, not one single pothole.
Thank you, Honorable Flax Charles. Mr. Vanterpool.
My rebuttal will be to advise every Virgin Guardian that have lands, hold on to it for your offspring. That crown lands needs to be put in the hands of the people who are not as fortunate as some of us. So they too could build a future for their children that's coming up. And I don't see why that could never been done and why it's taken so long.
Thank you very much. Honorable Flax Charles. We start with Mr. Levens this time. Thank you. What is your plan as it relates to sports and youth development within the 9th District? What is your plan as it relates to sports and youth development within the 9th District?
I think this goes back to youth empowerment. I think this goes back to having the facilities in place as Virgin Guardians, as well as Anegadians, to be able to have a facility to be able to produce the talent. It takes time, but it's like planting a seed. And I think what we need to do is we need to start to look maybe at a strategy where we can build a multi-purpose complex where we could have a track and where we could have the other sporting events involved in it. I'm not quite sure in terms of the swimming pool and how far that has gone, but I would say this to you, that we need to kind of look into developing the sports tourism product in this country, because we have a lot of talent, and it's not every child is academically inclined, but then they have children that have talent, and if you have those children that have the talent, then you foster that talent. Demoy Hodge is a talent that came out of the British Virgin Islands, and by putting the infrastructure in place, my good friend Steve Augustine, all of these guys had the ability to make a national name for the British Virgin Islands, and this is how your flagship is carried. So for the 9th District, I always hear people say softball, track the hair, I always hear track and field, but what is key is we develop them, and we could take our time and have a phased approach in developing them. So I'm one of those guys that would look into the sports tourism aspect on the island of Virgin Gorda and Anegada also, especially Anegada could have something for drag racing, or we could look into those things for go-kart racing. There are a lot of possibilities, but again, we have to look at the realisticness of the actual possibility and to see if what we are proposing is actually achievable. I can sit down here and tell you what I want to do, but we have to make sure that whatever we propose, that is achievable. And because the 9th District is connected with 2 islands, it's imperative that we make sense of what we're doing.
Thank you. Honorable Wheatley.
Sports and youth development, they go hand in hand, because sports is a great tool where students learn discipline, they learn teamwork, and they keep themselves fit. I will pick up exactly where I left off. Negotiate with Vanterpools to acquire that property between a basketball court and a football field to make a proper recreational facility in there. We could have basketball, we could have an indoor track, we could have tennis, we could have all the sports and basketball on the end. Sports can become a whole, sports tourism can be a whole thing for us. In the North Sound, I've seen an area where we could build an indoor basketball court right next to where the current court is. I've seen that. We're doing the costing, the current court can become the parking lot. We build an indoor court right to the back of it. The land is there, it is very doable. On Anegada, we started talking with the RDA about building a full-fledged track over there. There was only one piece of land that prevented it, but that portion will be reallocated, and we could build a full 400-meter track on Anegada. Anegadans always suffer from lack of recreational activities. That will soon be a thing of the past. Working with the RDA, we can bring the investors in, whoever we need to bring in, to make a big track. Anegada's flat is the easiest and cheapest place to put a full 400-meter track. No problem. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Wheatley. Mr. Vanterpool.
I thank you. For far too long, we've been playing around with our youths. Election in and election out. We continue to abuse and use them in order to get elected and re-elected. We have to get serious if we take our youths at heart. We have talented people, young people in this 9th district, but what? We use them. And our motives ain't pure. So we have to get serious first about it, and then foster a good relationship with these sportsmen and women, that when they go out to represent our islands, that they are properly compensated. And this is not encouraging. And that is the bottom line. That's the reality of it. It is not encouraging for one of our youngsters to say that, yeah, I'm going to pick this up as a career. Because what? We need to train. And training sometimes is an 8-hour shift. So they need to be paid like they are on a job, because one of them go overseas, bring home that gold medal. You know what it says for us? We on the map. I thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Flax Charles. What is your plan as it relates to sports and youth development within the 9th District?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Over and over, government to government have made promises to finish this pool. I made several attempts to try to pull persons together to get this pool finished. Constitutional reform is necessary to change the makeup of the cabinet. I have said it before. Every single member on the government side needs to sit in that cabinet, because those 5 people that sit in the cabinet, if they're not of like mind, or there's a dictator at the head as we have had before, nothing happens. And we want to keep these things until election times come. We could have had a facility here in Virgin Gorda, multi-purpose, but for the will of the leaders at the time. When FIFA, we were in talks with FIFA. Guess where they end up putting that stadium? In East End. A lot of political wrangling went on. And Virgin Gorda and Anegada need proper facilities. In St. Croix, the USBI government gave FIFA and their football association 10 acres of land, $1 a year. That's what it, not gave, unleased, sorry. That is what something for our young people. Because we need a full cadre of trainers in every sport. So we need to invest in persons being able to train our athletes. We need proper facilities in place. And sports teaches discipline. Sports allows you to keep persons off of the street who might otherwise get in trouble. Anegada has lots of flat land, so we have a lot of things we can do in Anegada, whether it's drag racing, horse racing, and all other types of sports. So we need to put our heads together, and there are many investors out there that are willing as well.
Thank you, Honorable Flax Charles. Any rebuttal? Honorable Wheatley.
I just wanted to say, with what I've seen happen in the BVI, with the facilities we have, people like Kyron McMaster and all those athletes who are shining over there, with an investment in sport, the BVI could be on the world stage every year in many different areas. We have to move beyond the talk and actually make this thing a reality. Give it a priority, find the funding where we can to make it work for our young people. Thank you.
We have to address this situation from a common sensical point of view. Anegada and Virgin Gorda is in the 9th district. To go put on a 400-meter track to invest in sports tourism, you would have to tie in Virgin Gorda in the track. They would have to be able to share the facilities, because you can't scale a business, make an investment to put on a 400-meter track to support 10 or 10 children. So I think that our approach has to be an approach that is realistic. We need to sit down and develop a strategy for sports tourism. It just can't be throwing shenanigans about we're going to put a track here and we're going to put that there. If we are going to invest, remember every investment has to be supported by infrastructure. If you put on a 400-meter track and you hold in a meet on Anegada and you have people come in there, 80 to 100 people, where are the rooms to put the people? We have to be realistic. in the understanding of our approach. So if we have Virgin Gorda and Anegada, yes, we can put down facilities, but we need to join them together and see which one should go where, so then we could create a system in which the youth then would have something to use.
Honorable Flax Charles, sure.
We have to ensure that we put cost-saving measures in place. Things need to be cost-effective. And working together with the two islands, with the experts in the field, I believe we can get it done. There are international standards that are required for us to contribute to our sports tourism. So putting down a track or a stadium, we have to collaborate with the BVI Olympic Committee, BVI Football, and all of the other sporting organizations. And I will say again, the investors are there, but the investors do not want to go in a back room with one person alone. They want us to come to them in a professional way with our lawyers and our finance people and ensure that everything is up and above board.
Thank you. Mr. Vanderpool?
Yes. I'm not picking on anyone, but when you refer to investors, who are you referring to? Because I think we locals are investors and we can invest, and the best people to invest is ourselves.
Can I?
You may respond.
We have to be willing to invest. We have to be willing to take that risk. And I will use, and some people are not happy.
Honorable Flax Charles, you have to respond directly to the question.
Yes, and that is what I'm doing.
Okay.
The investment club, the BVI investment club, some people do not like them. However, if all of us in this room would take after their model and get together and each person put something up, and we are putting those plans together now to show, with the help of the investment club, what can be done when we invest in ourselves. But we as a people need to want to take a chance. If there's an opportunity to make $20 off of 20 bottles of water, are we going to sit back and say, let somebody come in? When I refer to investors, it cannot only be investors from the outside. It must be a combination. We have proven it here in the BVI already.
Thank you,
and it can be done.
Charles. In the interest of time, we will move on to the next question. Unfortunately, we are unable to take all the questions from the audience, and so members of the audience, if you didn't hear your question tonight, I apologize, and I encourage you to ask the candidates directly after the debate if they are so willing. Our final question is going to Honorable Flax Charles. Honorable Wheatley. Honorable Vincent Wheatley, our final question will go to you. We'll start with you. This election was announced 6 weeks before it was due to happen, and our previous elections were also snap elections. What plans do you or your party have in place to prevent this from happening again to the people of the Virgin Islands, so that we can have ample time to be fully educated and make an informed decision?
I am not sure that you're correct with what you said there. Don't forget there was also a by-election to happen. That's why the election happened now. Because of the by-election was to happen in the first district. That didn't happen. But to address the question, our constitution allows us to have election at a latest date, which is 4 years after this election here. What a lot of persons don't like is the system we have. Unlike the United States, where elections are set date, I think it's that first Monday in November. I have no problem having a set date for an election. It would take out the mystery, it would take out the guesswork, it would take out all of that stuff, because you would know in advance, election is this first Monday, 4 years after the particular date. I have no issue at all having a set date for election. But we are following right now what the Constitution allows us to do, along with the Elections Act. It allows what happened out of uncertainty, where the government and the premier get together and they decide the election date. So a lot of persons don't like it because if you're trying to travel to come and vote, if you're a student away, something you don't have enough time to plan to be here. Candidates can't campaign effectively because you're in a crunch time trying to do everything in 2 weeks when you could have had 4 years to pace yourself. So I appreciate the question and see the need for a fixed and set date for elections going forward. Thank you.
Mr. Vanderpool, do you want me to repeat the question or you're...
You can repeat it.
This election was announced 6 weeks before it was due to happen, and our previous elections were also snap elections. What plans do you have in place to prevent this from happening if elected?
I firmly believe in having a set date for elections because I've been following elections since 1983. And to my knowledge, elections used to be called every November. I think might have been the first Monday in November. So we know that we can look out for elections in November. The previous elections now were called snap elections because particular parties felt that they did not have the sway and were losing it. So therefore, if we call it early, we make a snap election, we can regain back that government. And this has been a practice now for a good many years going forward. And it's time to put an end to it. I thank you.
Honorable Flax Charles.
Thank you, sir. On the campaign trail, many persons, young and old, have asked that question to me. And I would say to them, how do you want this thing to work? And overwhelmingly, the majority of persons speak to elections being held at one particular time of year in a 4-year period. For instance, the first Monday in a particular month. It gives the public an opportunity to understand the process and to hear from all the candidates so that they're able to make a decision. I believe everybody's running literally on fumes right now. The sitting government, and we've seen it over the decades, takes advantage because now they're the only ones that know when that election is going to be called. And so they put things in place with road pavings, patching potholes, bush cutting, to literally, in my opinion, buy votes. I saw something on Facebook today that one of my cousins in Tortola put up. It was a circle, a red circle with a mark diagonally through it. And behind that, it said, vote buy-in. And everybody should know that international symbol, the circle with the arrow through it. We cannot tolerate that. While some persons will say it puts money into certain people's pockets, this bush cutting and so forth, it's not sustainable. Let's give people real full-time jobs. Let's take back our country and ensure that our people have a say, and not just when elections come, you try to buy them out so you could get back in to do literally nothing again.
Thank you, Honorable Flax Charles. Mr. Levens, do you want me to repeat? Or you? The election was announced 6 weeks before it was due to happen, and our previous elections were also snap elections. What plans do you or your party have in place to prevent this from happening again, so that the people of the Virgin Islands can have ample time to fully educate themselves and make an informed decision?
This question goes to the root of constitutional reformation. The current constitution provision that there's a particular period in which an election has to occur. But then when you look at countries like British Columbia and Canada, and you look at the United States, they have a set election date. And if you're looking to structure true democracy, then you need to have transparency in the process. Because when you don't have a particular date, you allow the incumbent party to have an advantage over the other party, because they can set up their strategy, they can set up their plan, and then they can implement it because they would have already known what the date is. In terms of myself, I think that I'm in favor of a fixed election date. I think that we have to structure it to make sure that it gives us full benefit, but we are currently going through a constitutional reform, and considering that we're going through the constitutional reform, we have the opportune time and the perfect opportunity for us to be able to actually affect that particular change. I don't know if I should say this, but I guess I will know tomorrow, but I used to be part of the Constitutional Reform Committee, and one of the things that a lot of the people have asked for is they have asked for us to implement a fixed date for election. There are many Caribbean countries out there, I think Jamaica, they're trying to progress into that direction also, but I think that for the benefit of democracy and to give people a fair assessment and to give political parties a fair chance, I am in favor of having a constitution amended to have a fixed election date.
Thank you. Any rebuttal in this segment? Honorable Wheatley.
No, I'm glad McCoy mentioned the Constitution, because a lot of changes that we want to make are constitutional change. We are put under the Westminster system of governance. So there are limitations. And if you want to change these limitations, you heard the member earlier speak of cabinet. Cabinet is the way it is based on the Constitution and based on the Westminster system. There's no point complaining about it. If you're going to change these things, it requires constitutional change. We're not at liberty to make certain changes just because we don't like them or we feel they're not working for us. Democracies do mature, and again, the constitutional reviews were around, plus not a chance to give their input. These are some of the things that we should have been discussing. How do we change XYZ? You heard it for yourself. That's what was proposed in the constitutional change. If you want to move from the Westminster system, we have to start thinking now about more self-determination and more independence to get away from that system that we are currently operate under. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
I don't think we have no democracy. For the past few administrations, it has been run like a dictatorship. We need to go back to school and find out what the meaning of democracy really means. And that's my rebuttal.
Thank you.
Thank you. And that is why every single meeting that I went to for the Constitutional Review Commission, I spoke about the makeup of the cabinet. As a matter of fact, I was the one that put forward Mr. Levin's name to sit on that Constitutional Review Commission. I didn't have any luck putting forward any names for the tourist board, but I am glad that I was able to get a fellow 9th District colleague onto that commission. And we must, any meetings that are had, we have to attend. We have to voice our opinions. We cannot be afraid. Don't ever be afraid to voice your opinion, because you, the people, have the power. And we need to make sure that we understand that it is our constitutional right to do so.
Thank you, Mr. Levin.
Honorable Vincent had made a point about self-determination and independence, and I think that that's something that we need to make clear. Independence, one of the things under the UN Charter, and I guess Mr. Vincent will know 73, it speaks to the people being able to determine independence. So it means to say that a referendum would have to be in place. But I am not one of them that is for independence now, because I believe that what we need to be able to do is we need to be able to set the course of self-determination, being able to govern ourselves properly on behalf of the people before we look down the road of independence. So as a point of clarification for me, I want us to understand that the road to independence is not a road where we just wake up a morning and say we're going down the road to independence. What we need to be focusing on as a country and as a government, and I must say the NDP government, is we focusing on self-determination, being able to put things in place and to govern ourselves with accountability and transparency.
Thank you so much, Mr. Levens. Ladies and gentlemen, both in the audience and online, residents of the 9th District and illustrious candidates, we have reached the conclusion of tonight's insightful and engaging debate. I would like to express my sincere gratitude to each of our candidates, Mr. Vernon Vanterpool, independent candidate for the 9th District, Honorable Shireen Flax Charles, member of the Progressive Virgin Islands Movement, Mr. Coy Levens, member of the National Democratic Party, incumbent, Honorable Vincent Wheatley, member of the Virgin Islands Party. Thank you, candidates, for your participation and for sharing your views on the future of the Virgin Islands, to include Anegada and Virgin Gorda. We have had the privilege of hearing from 4 dedicated and passionate individuals who have presented their ideas and plans to address the pressing issues facing our islands. Through their thoughtful and respectful discourse, they have demonstrated their commitment to improving the lives of our residents and ensuring a prosperous future for the 9th District. As we move forward and approach the general elections on April 24th, I encourage each of you to reflect on the perspectives and proposals discussed here tonight. Consider the issues that matter most to you, your family, and your community, and make an informed decision when casting your vote. Remember, your vote is your voice, and it is through your collective efforts that we can build a brighter future for our beautiful Virgin Islands. To the audience, I want to say thank you for your thoughtful attention. Your engagement in the democratic process is essential for our communities' continued growth and success. We also extend our gratitude to the organizers. Can you please give them a round of applause? Thank you, organizers. You made it very possible for this event, and also for providing us with the opportunity to come together and engage in this important conversation. With that, we wish our candidates the best of luck in their respective campaigns, and we look forward to seeing the outcome of the general elections. Good night, and may the future of the British Virgin Islands be filled with progress, prosperity, and unity. Ladies and gentlemen, good night, candidates. Oh, okay, I thought we were going to move away from that in the interest of time, but ladies and gentlemen, we're going to give each candidate an opportunity to give a closing statement. We will begin with the incumbent, Honorable Wheatley.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, thanks for coming out tonight. You've heard all of us, you've heard our presentations. Your job now is to see which of our presentations or experience or passion or energy or dedication aligns with your dreams and aspirations for you, your family, the district, and the territory. I have a strong record of achievement, and I can guarantee you when you send me back there, I will continue the excellent work I have started. I'm dedicated to this, to seeing this through to the very end. I thank you all for coming out, and I love all of you very much. Thank you.
I would just like to thank our viewing audience as well as our audience currently in front of us for the opportunity to be able to come and to debate with my colleagues here this evening. I think that our strategy for going forward is about a new vision, because our country is at a crossroads, and it's very imperative that a decision that is being made is a decision that would propel our country in the right direction. We are about a mission to take not only ourselves, but to carry the people along with us on this mission and to be able to provide you with realistic solutions, not just saying words for saying words or making promises that cannot be kept, but for us to position ourselves to give solutions that are achievable and attainable within the period and time that we choose to seek. Please keep in mind that tonight was a debate of constructive criticism, and it is good to hear the different viewpoints, and I hope that when we finish with this exercise that we could farm up for the 9th district the solution that best benefit us so that we can propel the district in the direction that the district needs to go. So once again, thank you for the opportunity to have this discussion with you, and y'all have a pleasant and very good night.
When you love your country, you sacrifice. When you love your country, you take fire and brimstone. You even take abuse, unfortunately. The public would not have known some of the things that were going wrong if I did not stay. I am not the type to tuck my tail between my legs and run when the going gets tough. I did not do that. I stuck with the people. My life has been threatened. I have been criticized for being an angry woman. It is passion, it is not anger. The double standard. When a man is passionate, he is just that. He is doing the right thing. I stayed where I was so that I could inform you. There are many secrets. These reports, past and present, were very secretive. And some of us only knew about what was in the report literally when it was being laid on the table. Some things in the reports we never even knew were decided. As a matter of fact, I don't know how many of you have been watching the news. There's breaking news. Imagine that we have to go back in the house on Monday. The 9th district needs their fair share. We contribute a lot to the revenue of the territory. This week in my business forum, we had one property that paid $600,000 into the treasury. Another $2 million, and that is just for hotel accommodation tax. How much of that money are we getting back? We have to fight, we have to change the system, and we need to have our own district council, our island administration, so that we control what happens on Virgin Gorda and Anegada. And as a matter of fact, we'll have an island council on Anegada and one on Virgin Gorda, because the people of those islands need to be able to determine their future. Thank you very much, and it's been a great evening.
Mr. Vanderpool.
I thank you, the people of the 9th district, and my colleagues. I know it is late, the night has far been spent, but I would like you to remember where we are today is because of the party system. Ladies and gentlemen, we have reported, you will decide on the 24th of April, 2023, go out there, cast your X by Vernon Vanderpool, The Crown, and I pledge that we will work together. I will report to you. I don't hold no secret for no one. I thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, one more time, give it up for the candidates. Candidates, good luck and good night. Thank you so much.